Hello, hello, hello. I hope everyone is doing great this fine evening. We're chilling. We got the coughs. Alright, we're back. You ready, boy?
Yeah. I just need to see if I have a skin for Pike, because I have a bunch of essence and I have a bunch of skins for Pike in my crafting, so I want to see if I have 2 skins for Pike, and 2 of them I have in my crafting. Okay. Just whenever I get multiple, I just try to keep one skin for all the champs in there, if I don't have them. Alright, bro?
Yeah, you, voice chat, bro. Her fucking blew out my eardrums.
The client's being weird. I'm gonna restart it.
Okay.
Oh, you're doing it wrong, man.
You're doing it wrong, man.
It's being weird. Like I closed it and it kept launching it instead of instantly open. It's like let it go into my task and then close it.
We're gonna celebrate.
Alright, let's go.
What the fuck was that sound?
Let's hit the Q button now.
I don't know. I guess we're just gonna go. Heard a weird noise.
I'm just feeling celebration tonight. Celebrate, don't wait too late. No, you don't stop. You can't stop. We're gonna celebrate one more time. One more time. One more time. A celebration.
What was that?
You know we're gonna do it right tonight. Hey, just feel it. Music's got me feeling the need. Yeah.
Oops, forgot to change my title. Fuck.
All right, we're gonna celebrate one more time. Celebrate and dance so free. dance so free. One more time, music's got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, music's got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, music's got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, music's got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, music's got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, music's got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, music's got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, music's got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, yeah.
What the fuck is this queue timer? Okay.
No, bro. That's what I was talking about.
Dead game, bro. Dead game. Dead fucking game.
Only the rank.
No, this is normal.
This is normal.
Wow.
Bruh. We should play rank.
Okay. Do you still want same positions?
Yeah.
Good.
Pike and Nami are really hot right now. So I'm gonna pick them up. And if they get banned out, I was picking up Nautilus too.
I wouldn't think both of those would be banned out, but you never know.
Yeah, I know. I was like, with my luck, dude, and I decided I want to play some champions. They just get fucked.
True, like the Darius, the 3-time Darius man. Yeah, that was so bad.
At the time, I just needed one more game to get him 7. I got it now. I wish S- worked for your tier 7.
So do I.
Apparently Tarek is a big counter to a Pike.
What about Morgana?
No. He's too mobile. You got Tarek, Maokai, and Syndra. So people that can burst him, and people like Maokai has 0.6 CC, so it's hard to get away from him. And I'm noticing that like the highest win rates against him are tanks. So we just need them to be squishy.
Gotcha.
You don't see Tarks often though. That makes me want to ban like Blitzcrank and Nautilus. No, unfortunately Thresh isn't good anymore, he's not tanky enough.
I can ban Nautilus if you want,
Okie dokie.
because Nautilus is annoying to play against. Going with the
I
Tark
want
just
ban
to
Syndra.
be safe, huh?
Yeah, just make sure I can't get tanked. Like it'll be a very specific tank. Ah, damn.
Bro, I played against an Aurelia the other day, and I 1v1'd her, like mid-game, like level 11 or 12. Beat her ass. Fucking, she comes back, kills me. She comes back, kills me again. Fucking just did bloodlust for me, like 5 times. Literally didn't do anything on the map except for hunt me down. It was kind of funny. Draven Yuumi is gonna be annoying.
There's a new soap. Can you smell it? The dark side and the light. The Dr. Squatch Star Wars collection.
I almost want
is
to take
here
Ignite to counteract
with
the
natural,
healing,
nourishing
but I know we'll need
ingredients
Exhaust
and
if we
4
get
galactic
behind.
scents.
Because
There's a
Aurelia,
path and a
Draven,
bath for everyone.
Jax.
Oh,
Exhaust is
smell like
always
you
nice,
stepped
bro.
inside a tauntaun. Take
Yeah,
this.
it just
Are
won't
you a
help us in
Jedi
our.
kind
It
of
won't
guy?
help our lane fight very
With
much.
only hope
Like it
self,
will, but
feeling wise.
like
Wisdom
negating the
washes
healing
away.
from Yumi
Wanna
would
dabble
be
with the
stronger.
dark
Because I
side?
bet you she
Dark
has heal
side
exhaust
scrub
in her
and
heal.
ruthless rinse will
So she's
seduce
just
your
gonna be
senses and
fucking,
exfoliate
like,
your skin,
mad
making
heal, like-
you feel
He could be about to
Power.
die, and then she could give him like 3/4 of his health back real quick.
Mike. Mike.
But once I
snap
get
out
my
of it.
second item, I'll
You
have
must
Grievous
find
Wounds.
balance in the bundle.
Amber and charcoal? Oh, zest and woods.
Herbs and citrus. Cypress and oak. Oak, Mike. Oak. It's so balanced.
Silence? I've chosen my
And all I have to do is land my
Listen,
bubble.
It's easy to give in the
Like,
dark side
and
scrub,
it'll be good.
but I think you should appreciate the galaxy of scents.
Oh, Exhaust
You're not
Ignite.
with me.
They're going. I guess that makes
You
sense.
were my brother, Mike.
Yeah, I don't think she needs flash, bro.
No, she doesn't need Flash. Well, I just thought she might take heal and let him take the Ignite so that he can be, like, trying to funnel the kills a little better. Because if they get away, the Ignite kills him, that'll be his Ignite.
Right.
It just helps feed him, like champs that need funnel fed a little better, like Draven with his passive. It just is a little easier for them to get the kill. And like when I play Yasuo bot lane, that's why I do it. It's just because it's a little easier to funnel the kills when the damage dealer takes the Ignite. Gotta trust your support though. You know, but your support should be able to like know what to do.
Computer problems. Holy shit. What the fuck? Wigged
We have
out
a
for a
good
second.
jungler,
Wigged out
though.
for a second. Sorry, I'm coming. Wigged out for a second. Pretty sure I decided I didn't need that light on. Does that bother you, brother?
It just means that they're bad. If they don't.
Good stuff. We have an Ornn mid.
And if he
That's-
wanted to do it super spicy, what he does is he brings the camps together so he can hit him with his Q. He can do Gromp and Blue Buff at the same time-ish.
Oh my god, I'm so bad. Oh, we should not have hopped right in. It's like, I forget how to play this game
Just
for
try
like
to
one
last it
game.
and I can push him off of the minions. And you outrange him so we can just harass the shit out of him. Like what I'm doing right now.
I'll save my sniper gun so we just harass the fuck out of him.
Ugh. I also took biscuits, so I have a bunch of mana and healing. Oof, Dark Harvest.
Yeah, oof is right. Goddamn. Why do I feel like we're about to get ganked? Oh, I missed the cannon? Really? You fuck. I've got the Zoomy.
Like that. He just healed. I'm gonna go ward.
I got stun up again. Land that bubble, he's dead. Even with Yumi on him.
Oops. He went down with his thingy.
Land on him, not on the minions.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess I should have been more specific. That one's on me, I'll give it to you. Although, his Dark Harvest might fucking hurt. I'll have to be quick on the heal.
Echo's coming down here.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh, that preemptive flash and heal, honestly, I think saved me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said, oh, and I flashed.
No, you should stay here. Stay
Okay,
here
okay.
for the mini wave at least to cast against the tower. I can keep you healed up enough to not die.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'll fall behind fat in XP.
Yeah, I got quite a bit. Let's go.
Okay, now we can get out of here.
Dude, we could fight him. Oh, you don't have mana. Okay.
I don't have mana.
Okay.
It's just so we wouldn't fall behind in XP.
Yeah, yeah, boy.
Or as much behind.
I went Vamp Scepter, so now our lane sustain is ridiculous. But, oh, Aurelia is fucking huge.
Yep.
Oh my god. That's kind of sucks. Looks like it's up to you and me, bro. Thank you.
Oh, I stole that, my bad.
It's all good. Nah, too slow. God damn it, just a fucking Scotium too early. I'm so bad. It's alright. Nice. Draven players are fairly predictable. Oh, that kind of hurt. Ah, what the fuck? I can't step up, really. He's got me down, I can't think. Did he really just flash? Really? Alright.
Wow.
Well, I guess that happened. I would really needed 6, and we could have won that. This game is looking like one of those
That's what I was
losers,
saying,
though.
If I had Ignite, I could negate all that healing.
Right. Maybe we should have went with Ignite
Well, not
instead.
all of it, but...
Maybe I should rush Grievous Wounds, bro.
I get it as my second item.
Got your back, bitch. Bro, it's just fucking GG because of that. God damn.
Yeah.
Fuck me. It's fucking, yeah, it's fucking bad. It's rough out here, gentlemen. He has no mana, and they're probably gonna come down and crash, huh? Yep, here they come.
Yeah.
Or for Dragon. Draven went cocky. Draven went serrated Dirk. He's fucking building lethality. I want to kill him. We could definitely kill him. Now we can't. Yeah, maybe. If I switch to my other gun, maybe. The only thing about trying to switch weapons, bro, is it just eats your fucking mana. And it can really, you can really fuck yourself on farm. Oh shit, we should have rushed that.
One second.
Good shit. Good job,
you.
buddy. That was
Took a
beautiful.
tower shot so that you could eat a tower shot. I need to get out of here. They're gonna crush me
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
lemon
Good
lane.
call. Good call. Oh, we're like right there. Really? His
I hit my
fucking.
W like 3 times. Oh, I'm sorry, bro.
Well, you hit your W, and his fucking dash followed my flash.
So yeah, it's because you blinked before he was on you. It's like when people flash away from Warwick before his Q goes off.
Boo!
This will be huge, though.
I did get 1,700 gold for that, though.
I could've
And
saved
he's
you
building
going-
lethality. He's going to fall off. So if we can contain this Aurelia, maybe, should be okay. But there's a 4-level difference mid. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, jungle's not doing too bad. He's keeping up in farm. Less kills. Oh, go help him. She's gonna kill him. Yeah, that's over. Honestly, I don't know what I was thinking. Good ult. You forced it out, though. Honestly? Yeah! I got that enemy. Thanks to you, bro!
Yeah. I tried to hit my Q on him.
I mean, at least we're going even bot lane. I mean... Could be worse. Could be worse. Wow, that was pitiful. If you can kill her.
Oh god.
Just go. Yeah. It's a joke.
Four people bot lane. I thought that was pretty ballsy. He was down there for a minute. Yeah. Not much of a burst mage.
I'm gonna say my piece and now I'm gonna mute all. 06, 04, 34. 3-4. Bad. Bad game. Although we can burst him, we can kill him. Oh my god, here we fucking go again. Yeah, I'm just dead. We don't even have a tower anymore. Oh my god. What a game.
She just outruns me.
Yeah, she just outruns a both. Well, granted, I guess I only have 2-1 boots, but what do you do? Someone goes 0-10 within the first 15 minutes. Or 0-6, sorry.
Oh, the Echo didn't ult. Lols.
Lols. Ugh, my auto attacks are at that weird stage. How did she get on my fucking face again? Fuck that. I'm out.
So fast. Okay, yeah, that's right. She can just run Mach 10.
Yeah, I don't want any part of it.
That's like we could have killed her for a second when she dashed up and didn't kill you. Her Q was on cooldown. She can't move around anymore.
Yeah, you better run, bitch. Yeah, I don't even want to. Yeah. Haha, yeah. Yeah, fuckheads. What a bunch of fuckers. Doing no part of that shit. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, first shitty game of the night. I guess we're gonna keep playing the game. Okay. Winnable, winnable. Winnable. Fucking bitch. God damn it, Dylan. Come on. Farm right. Farm right.
What's
Ding-a-ling.
this nuts is coming?
I
Oh,
know.
I guess.
Did you take fucking electrocute?
I did.
Me? Damn, I didn't chunk him like that. Uh-oh, problem. Honestly, if she had like 2 less kills or 3 less kills, I think I would have outmatched her. But, too strong. Honestly, I kind of deserved that. We pushed out way too far. But,
One on the tower, almost got it.
yeah, same.
We should have just inted for it.
Do you think
Yeah,
so?
She would have got it. Yeah.
I was thinking
Well,
the
we
same
died
thing.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as we saw Aurelia, we should have just went full bore. Rough. Dude, why? Why? Where the fuck are you even coming from, bro? she zigzags up a fucking line of minions and she's on my fucking face. What the fuck? What the fuck? And why did my computer just do this?
Oh, of course the Draven comes in and saves him. I was like, I was gonna live and then throw another bubble and get him.
Bum, 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 bum. Get us out! Get us the fuck out. Come on, bro. I want to play a good game of League. Fuck. That was diabolical. That was like instant loss before we even had a chance, bot lane. 0-9. Or what was he? Where did he go? 3-7. Wasn't so bad, but he was 0-6 within the first like 10 minutes. Not saying that I've never done that before, but fuck. What? Who fucking takes Ornn into Aurelia mid? How did he even know she was going mid? Sloppy, bro. Sloppy.
You say play this one and switch to Civ?
Yeah, I'm down.
I'll come out and smack. Dude, we were about to pull our lane in too, and they knew it. That's why they started sending the goon squad bot lane, because we had him. It's like, yeah, he got an early lead or whatever, but we got that double kill and he beat lethality, so we were ahead of him because he only got one of us. We killed both. And you were keeping up in farm, so we were like a kill ahead. And it was shutdown gold too, so it was shutdown gold and the double kill. So And I just got my damage buff item, so if I hit my thing, I like damn near one-shot him. And then like you're on his ass. So it's like I would burst his health and Yumi would blow her heals, and basically it was just a normal 1v1 between you two.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was just negating her health by dealing damage. Then Aurelia was like, oh, let me come down and two-shot you with my Q auto attack. It was a sad day. But yeah.
It's a sad day. One, two, three, four.
Malphite mid has a 56% win rate out of. Oh, well, I guess he has a 0.8% pick rate, which is not very good. Hey, my boy Yasuo is up in tier 2.
Let's go, baby.
I'm gonna get demoted if I lose another match. Well, I guess I'll just be at 0. I don't know how it works though, because I didn't have to do promotionals or provisionals or whatever to get from bronze to silver.
What's that puppy doing? Q-pop. Q-pop. Q. Ah, the double kill was juicy, bro. Would you bring out your Vape when you come, bro?
Yeah,
Think of.
it's actually charging right now.
Oh, even better, bro.
Puppy, stop it. Your nose is cold and wet. Please be Ari mid or something. Oh, yeah.
That's kind of gross, huh?
Yeah, it just, if she's a good Anivia, it'll just mean that I can't kill her.
Liberty bit.
Because she'll use her wall to keep me from it, like, getting her. But with a gank, it's easy enough. And then once I get so far ahead of her, it's a snowball. It's kind of a snowball in either direction, but I can just buy a coal and not fight her. Ah, heck rim. And since Ignite won't really help me, I'll take Exhaust for Hecarim and Tryndamere.
My family has a cabin in British Columbia. That was
Anivia
built
support,
by
Aurelion Sol
my
mid?
parents.
He's supposed to
We
be
use it
good
as a
against
vacation
Yasuo.
spot every summer, since that side of my family is huge. We always have to
Man, we
coordinate
should have
with
switched to
everyone
Civ.
pick who gets which weeks.
I can't fucking believe it.
One summer,
They super
about
trade. They
nine
fucking
Oh.
Hecarim, Tryndamere,
Had a new
Aurelion Sol, and
girlfriend,
Anivia super
who
counter
later
pick against
became
me.
my favorite aunt Kerry. We decided
They were like,
all
fuck the
sort of
Yasuo. And at least they have a mobile ADC, so it's not like once they get on him, the ADC is dead. It's like you just dive in it for the
It was
kill.
starting to get dark,
Right.
and there was a heavy
What skin
feeling
should I
in the
do?
air that evening. I figured we were all just beat from the 9-hour drive that day. All of us started pulling the suitcases and coolers out of the trucks.
I don't know, bro. What
and
skins?
putting them on
Definitely
I
Blood
like the
Moon.
Blood Moon skin. It's my
Kerry,
favorite.
being the new person in the family, wanted to help out to make a good first impression.
Ugh.
So she started
Aurelian
bringing everything
Soul?
inside for us by herself.
I bet it's an Nivea support, which
She
will be
disappeared
annoying
into
for
the
you
cabin
guys.
for several minutes and came back out with a strange look on her face. She walked up to Nana and said something about another relative still being there, and that she thought our group was the only one booked that week. My grandpa has a sketchy homeless/addict sister who frequently squats in the cabin when people aren't there. So of course she gets irritated and calls out my grandpa. For Christ's sake, Bill, Kerry says Sylvia is here. But immediately Kerry says that she didn't think it would be Grandpa's sister unless she happened to be about 20-ish years older than him. At this point, my Nana is playing confused and decides to go in to see who it is. I trail her.
All I have to do
being
is
a nosy
outfarm this
kid,
Aurelian Soul and
and
I'll
she looks
fucking clap his
upstairs and I
cheeks.
take the main floor. And I run into my uncle who was using the bathroom. Kerry walks inside and he says he heard her talking to someone a minute ago and asks who it was. Oh, I ran into a woman in that bedroom when I came in. I just said hi to her. And she points to the bedroom that used to belong to my great-grandmother before she passed. Still, at this point, none of us had clued in on what had happened until my Nana came back downstairs to tell us no one was here. I started to feel creeped out, and I can see that Kerry and my uncle are as well. We resume our unpacking, and Kerry starts to carry her things upstairs, but stops on the stairwell and drops her bags. My uncle asks if she's okay, and she can barely get a word out. She points to a picture we have on the stair landing and says, "That's her. That's the woman I saw." The picture was of my great-grandparents, and it had a small plaque at the bottom with their names. Of course, my uncle is a skeptic, and immediately says,
Is this the same graves from last game?
"Let's try, but no way. That's my
No,
grandma May.
probably not.
She died like 6 years ago." Kerry looked at him and me and my Nana, and I will never forget the look on our face. It was such an intense look of shock and sadness, a look that made my uncle
Yeah,
and
it is
Nana
an
and I
evolution
all
bot
believe
lane.
her. She told us that she swore she came in to bring my Nana's things into the bedroom and saw an old woman standing by the window. She apologized for barging in and that it was nice to meet her, and then the woman smiled before turning back to the window. She even described what she was wearing, a green velvet material sweater with beadwork in the shape of a daisy in the front, my great-grandma's favorite sweater. And we all got chills and told everyone else what was happening. My grandpa is a stern, bull-headed man who refuses to believe
Yeah, I
anything
know.
slightly
You
abnormal.
shit. Idiot
Yet
boy.
even he seemed creeped out upon hearing that my aunt...
Oh, I
had
should have
apparently
flashed to
just
follow.
lost her mother.
Ugh. I
My
should have
aunt
instant
is far
flashed. I
from the
thought
only
about it. I
person
shouldn't
in
have
our family
hesitated.
who has
He
seen
was
or
one hit
heard
from dead. I
something
should've
like that
killed him.
in that
God
room.
damn it. I didn't
Man.
want to waste
Even
both
I
my
had a similar
things.
experience. Late one night,
What an
everyone was
impressive
having
bot
a
lane.
fire in the backyard,
Hey.
and I ran inside to get marshmallows. You have to pass that bedroom to get to the
I
kitchen
should have
from the back
flashed.
door. And as I did, I distinctly heard a conversation happening in the room.
I dodged his stun.
As I mentioned
That was
before,
good.
everyone was still outside. The closer I got to the door, the quieter the talking got, and it faded away. This was after the incident with Kerry, so I just poked my head around and said, "Good night, Nana May," and found the marshmallows and went back outside. The tales I have to tell about that cabin could fill a book. Most of them not nearly as light-hearted or happy as the spirit of our Nana May popping in every now and then. Maybe I'll share more another day. I've had a series of strange events happen in Haunted Woods. All of this happened this summer when I was working and living in the Chicago area.
Bro, we
I don't
literally
know
cannot
much
do
about
anything against the
spirits or
spotlight.
paranormal events, so I'll just give you the facts of what happened, and you can make your own conclusions. In the first few weeks of my new job, I met this really great guy called Paul. We hit it off immediately, and one day he suggested we go hiking in the woods. I'm from Russia originally, so I was practically raised in the woods, and I was really excited about this proposal. As we're hiking, it starts pouring with rain, an amount the likes of which I had never seen. We go deeper and deeper into the forest until there's no more paths, and we're practically treading swamp water. All this time, we're just talking about random stuff and getting to know each other while not really paying much attention to the surroundings. There's no one around since we've gone pretty deep in already, and it was pouring buckets. Eventually, we stumble on the skeleton of a teepee, just the bare wooden structure of it, and thought it was pretty cool, so we kept going in that direction. Suddenly, we both hear someone crying. It sounded like a baby, and it's a forest, so lots of animals can imitate that sound, like deer, cubs, and the like. The cry sounded distant, so we thought nothing of it and walked forwards. Within seconds, we heard the thing right next to us, which seemed strange since it sounded so far away at first. It was so loud, it could have been a few feet away, and we started looking all around, even looking at the trees, and absolutely nothing was there. It was a pretty weird situation, so we kind of speed walk in the other direction. As soon as we stop for a break, the sound starts up right next to us again, like something was telling us to book it. So we did. Ran faster than was probably safe in that kind of weather, half looking at Google Maps and half relying on me. We made it back to the entrance of the woods, and both agreed that what happened was pretty weird, and decided to look into the history of the place. Immediately websites like Most Haunted Forests in Illinois started popping up. Turns out the place was a site of ancient Native American burial grounds. Not surprised, since a lot of tribes used to live in various parts of Illinois. Paul and I went back, and I've kind of forgot the incident until one evening after work, when he tells me that he can't stop thinking about the cry and wants to go back to see what was there. Naturally, I think it's a stupid idea, especially because it was already dark out. But then Paul's friend Ryan joins him for kicks, and since I'm worried for both of their safety, 20-something fresh out of college dudes can be very dumb, you see, I come along with them, thinking that I can at least keep them out of trouble. So we hop in the car and drive over there. The traffic is insane, and my friend takes a wrong turn, so we don't get there until 11 p.m. We get out and head into the forest. Now, there's no streetlights anywhere near us, except right at the edge of the road, and the flashlights can only do so much. So, our visibility is pretty bad. We eventually get to a small wooden bridge that leads us across the river into the actual deep part of the forest. And as soon as we cross, I start feeling uneasy. We weren't supposed to be in the woods that late in the first place, but there was a deeper feeling of guilt, like we were intruding or disturbing something that was there. Ryan, who's been leading the way and feeling all confident and cocky, saying that there's nothing out here, stops all of a sudden. On the
I
other
was
side of the
slowed
bridge,
from the Trinity
the
W
three of us
trying
were
to
hit with this
hoping to
feeling of
goodness I'd
dread.
be able to kill him before his like level 2 ran out.
One I've never felt in a forest before.
This is a fucking joke. I don't even want to play
So
games anymore. This is fucking so
both in the
stupid.
day and at night. We all exchange
My fucking
nervous
Tom
looks,
Kent just constantly
and
helping
suddenly
you.
hear
You might as well
crunching
just go
coming
fucking
towards
mid
us
lane.
from the dark. The feeling at this point gets so
Well,
intense
he followed the Lucian
that
up
Ryan,
and fought the Lucian with the
confidently
Graves.
walking ahead
Yeah, I wish he'd
seconds
fucking
ago,
fight with me
now looks
instead of
uneasy
bitching and
says,
moaning.
I think we should go back. We all slowly turn around and start speed walking towards the bridge. No one talks until
Fucking
we
can
get
help
to the
everybody
other
else, but he
side.
can't even help his own
And
fucking
Ryan says,
ADC.
I was just
So
nervous.
fucking tired of this game.
It might have been a homeless person, and I didn't want to deal with that. Eventually, we get to the road where our car was parked, along the side, and that's when I see a girl. Maybe in her early 20s. She looked Native American, or a mix of Asian and Latino, just walking along the highway. She was wearing very little clothing, and looked a little strange. Her walk wasn't a drunken one. She just seemed to be almost vibrating, undulating. But there wasn't a building around for miles.
Oh, he feared me,
My
so it canceled
stepdad
my queue.
is Malaysian.
Oh, Heckrum, you
And he's
piece of
told me a
shit.
bunch of ghost stories about young ghost women on the sides of the roads
Ugh,
that killed.
if only my E was up.
There are countless worlds out there to be explored. So much to learn, no matter how
Kill drivers, but I was willing to risk it because I didn't want to leave the girl alone, ghost or no ghost. So I convinced Paul to slow down a bit when we get to her, and I called out to her from the passenger window.
Oh gee, he
asking
fucking
if she
finally
needed
shows
help.
up. Thanks, bro.
The girl slowly
Too little
turns
fucking
around
late.
with the creepiest, slowest
Now we just
smile
die. We just
looking
die
at
under
her
tower.
face. I was hit with that same feeling I got back there in the forest.
Yeah, that's a
And almost regretted
I'm so-
slowing down. But whatever. My sense of wanting to help that girl was greater than
cares?
whatever weird stuff I was feeling. And if I died then, at least I'd have a clean conscience. She gets in the back of the car right behind my seat, and next to Ryan, who is a bit of a flirt, and he starts to chat her up, asking where she's from and what she's doing. All this time I'm turned halfway around, keeping an eye on her because I feel like as soon as I turn around and face the road, something bad is gonna happen. She's making eye contact with me the whole time, even when Ryan is talking to her with that very slow, creepy smile. Ryan asks her where she's coming from, and she says, "Oh, just around." He asks if she's coming from a bar, and she nods, except of course there are no bars around for anywhere. She says that she was walking, and gives Paul an address, which is 15 minutes away by car. My eyes hurt from making eye contact with her, and she just kept smiling and undulating, and this feeling of dread just kept increasing. So we eventually drop her off at her street, and when I turn back to look a second later, she's gone. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept imagining her creeping up the stairs, her smiling face undulating from the shadows. When I was rather young and in second grade, my family lived in the country out in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi. There were no children for me to play with, and I tended to be a bit lonely, as you might expect. When we were in the process of moving out there, my parents had this double-wide trailer, and there was one incident
Oh
that
my
took
goodness,
many
she's
years
so
to be
fast.
certain I
She just
hadn't
way
committed.
outruns me.
While on one expedition to the plot where my family were going to put the trailer, my mother needed to make a stop to use the restroom. With no gas station for a good 10 miles, Dad pulled the truck down this dirt road looking for a place to halt. There, maybe 200 to 300 yards from the two-lane road, we found what looked to be an abandoned gymnasium from a school. Dad decided to use that as a place for the bathroom, and we headed in. I did not recall much about the building, though one thing always stuck out in my mind. Near the doors we entered through was this rather massive pile of clothing. I remember after doing his business, my father stood at the front of it looking up at the clothing. He seemed to be thinking of something but never said anything about it. Several weeks later, With the trailer in place, we moved out there, and the gym was largely forgotten about by me. However, that didn't stop weird things from happening. Well, not weird in the sense of stuff moving around or anything of the sort. Weird sounds. Within a month or so of living there, I was playing on the front porch where I heard laughter. Now, before I go any further, let me clarify as to where we lived. The trailer was a good 100 feet back from a dirt road, and across the road was the home of an elderly gentleman I'll call Oliver. Behind his house was a rather extensive stand of pine trees that reached right between the two-lane highway. Probably a distance of 500 to 600 feet total.
I almost schooled that
from where
Lucian
I
until
was
Heckram came in
behind
there.
me. In any case, as I sat on the front porch, my
Fucking,
father
he came
had
in when I
built,
was almost dead.
playing with some
Through
of
my
my
wind wall when he
toys,
dashed.
I kept
Fucking, he
hearing
went,
laughter.
then he went to go to the other side.
Not
and
a
I dashed
single
through him.
child's
Fucking had him
laugh,
almost killed. Had my
but
tornado
something.
stacked up. My wind wall was
It
still up.
sounded to my ears
Heckram
like
comes
5
in.
or 6
Boom!
kids were playing somewhere off behind where Oliver lived. Not having anyone to play with, I remember wondering where those kids were, and if they would play with me. Walking up to the road, I could tell that
It's
these
because
kids
she's 8
seemed
and
to be
1.
playing in the woods,
That's why
as their
it's still
laugh
killer.
came and
Please
went.
say yes.
After a while, I
haven't
called out
voted
to
yet.
them that I wanted to play too. And as
I just
soon
wanna
as I
fight
said
this, what's
that,
this next
the
one more
laughter
time?
cut off.
I don't want to play this game anymore.
One moment there was
I
laughter
understand.
and fun.
I'm just
the
going
next,
to either get a
It was
killer
so
into.
quiet that you could hear a pin drop. I figured I must have scared the kids off and went back inside. This happened several times, and eventually I just...
Oh, I missed bad.
I'd hear the kids laughing and playing, but they never seemed to get closer. After a couple of times of this happening, I remember telling my mother, and she got a really odd look on her face before telling me that she didn't want me playing out front any longer.
Oh, I guess it doesn't
We lived
matter
there
because
for another
somebody
2
said
years
no
or
and it's
so
an early
before we
4-player
moved.
car.
And I largely forgot the experience.
So I just entered
It
for
wasn't
nothing.
until many years later when the story came up again in conversation with my parents. That's when I found out some of the story, and personal investigations told me the rest. My mother said that the reason she'd reacted that way was because she'd heard a rumor that the area we'd moved into was haunted. She didn't have all the details,
Wow.
but felt it was tied to
Ah.
the gym. All she could say, or would say, was something bad had happened, and she was afraid. After my parents passed, I forgot the story again. It always stuck in the back of my head as something weird, but that was it. Eventually, one bored night, I happened to stumble across the website for the church we had been attending. On a lark, I shot an email off to the pastor asking
But yeah,
if there had
who's
ever
he
been
talking
a
about?
gym near
Because you
where
got a
I
kill.
remembered,
I was
and
like, you
didn't
killed the
expect
Lucian.
to hear back. 2 months later,
I don't know. I have
I
everybody
checked
muted.
my emails to find that yes,
Oh, okay.
he had actually replied. Here is what he related to me. There had been a
Worth a
gym that
ban.
once stood near where I described, though it had long since been torn down. The gym had been part of a private
this
school
game be over.
which had stood there from roughly 1900 to 1979 or 80. Early in the spring of that year, a tornado had gone through and demolished most of one wing of the school, and in doing so, killing a number of students. The building had collapsed, burying the students under the rubble, resulting in the death of a number.
Oh, yep, that's fun.
I think between and after this, it was decided to close the school. As they
I
were
missed.
demolishing it, they cleaned out clothing from lockers and various places, dumping it in the gym in a tall pile. I remembered seeing that. The gym had been left standing because it was hoped that one of the local churches might use it. But, given what happened there, it ended up being abandoned. Curiously, the property behind Oliver's house had also been part of the school property at one point, being used by the students as a kind of playground area. This
That's
would explain
disgusting.
why Oliver kept digging up old toys, mostly metal trucks and such, to which he gave me. Looking back, I've come to the conclusion that what I had been hearing was in some way tied to
Yeah,
the old school
fuck.
and loss of life. Though I also wonder if in some way it could have been my childhood imagination running wild. Whatever the case, I thought you'd find this story interesting to say the least.
Your turret has been destroyed.
My uncle had just gotten married, and he and his wife and her daughter had gone to Big Bear.
Not
as a
even
sort of
fucking with it,
honeymoon.
bro.
He rented a cabin in a nice area near the lake. They had all settled in and had a nice day at the lake. They went inside, had dinner, and after some TV time around 8ish, his wife and her daughter went to bed. It was a small one-bedroom cabin, so the layout was like
Wow.
one small hallway that led
I was
out to the
doing
back
well
of
in
the
my
cabin,
lane for a
where
little
the
while.
entrance to the bedroom was across, and a ways up was the bathroom.
Okay.
So the bathroom and the
I'm gonna
bedroom
come out and
don't
do
look
drugs on that
into
note.
one another.
Yeah.
You would cross the bathroom entrance before reaching the bedroom.
That
if
is
you
an
were going
oppressive
down the
lane.
hall
I knew
from the
that was
living
gonna be a
room
bad
slash
lane
kitchen
because
area.
of Nivea's fucking
The
wall.
living room and
It's just a
kitchen
bad
Illusions
game,
of
bro.
mobility.
I don't even
room
fucking
at the
care.
front
It's a
of the
stupid
cabin.
game.
My
Not
uncle
even
had
worth
stayed
it.
up to watch TV, and an hour or so passes by, and he has to pee. So he goes into the bathroom,
Should've just
doesn't
one
bother
done it.
closing the door because no one
We
was
shouldn't have
home
even fucking
anyway,
played one.
and proceeds to do his business.
Fucking stupid game.
As he's doing so, he sees his wife pass by the doorway on her way towards the living room slash kitchen area. He finishes up, heads into the hallway to catch up with her, and sees her at the end of the hall.
I'll be out in just a second. My
He was
bot
about
page
to
should be
say
nice and
something
charged up now.
when she kind of half turns
Sounds
towards
good.
the kitchen, and suddenly flies into the kitchen at breakneck speed, making no noise and disappears. He runs down the hall, which is only really a few steps into the dark room, lit only by the TV still on, and no one's there. No lights are on, no one's in the kitchen at this point, and he was pretty unnerved, so he goes back down the hallway and looks into the room to see his wife and daughter 100% asleep and undisturbed in bed. He realized that the woman he saw wore a knee-length white sleeping gown, while his wife was wearing pajamas. So he has no idea who it was that he saw walk past him in the restroom, or who it was that flew unnaturally into the kitchen. He was scared, but saw no reason to wake up his wife or kid. But he didn't want to go to bed, so as soon as they woke up, they packed up and left before he told them what he had seen. Later on, he called up the owner of the cabin and asked him if anything weird had happened up in the cabin. The guy went, "Oh, you saw her?" He hadn't told the guy that he had seen a woman at this point, only that he was wondering if anything odd had been reported in the cabin prior. I work in a wildlife rehabilitation center in the middle of a forest, atop a hill about 20 minutes away from the nearest streetlight. It's a beautiful property during the day, but at night, you can hardly see your hand in front of your face, unless the moon is high enough over the trees to shed a little bit of light on the area. I started working here last year, usually being put on the closing shift, but we typically were on the property until the wee hours of the morning, since the sheer number of animals in our care prevented us from going home before everything was complete. The facility itself is deeply
2 games in
haunted.
fucking row.
I've known that since a few weeks into my employment. One of the routes for the Trail of Tears
Well, I don't know, what
actually
about
went
that?
right through
I
what
didn't
is
think
now the
NVIDIA was that
property.
strong of a support, bro.
But more of
She
that later.
literally walled every
These are some of the
chance I
stories.
made and made everything I did. It's not, no way.
That I have collected while working here.
I just,
One night, as we were all wrapping up downstairs and getting ready to shut down for the evening, the doorbell rang. It must have been 10 p.m. by then. and we close admissions by 5 usually, as all of our admissions are
us
by
just gets fucked up. Dude.
but only
It's all your
in
fault,
Asia
bro.
we get
What?
admitted.
What are you talking
With a
about?
sigh, my
When he just starts
co-worker goes
rolling in,
upstairs
oh
to
my
greet
God,
the
just leave me
person and
alone.
take the animal down for a quick examination. After a few minutes, she comes back down empty-handed and looking a bit unsettled. Upon being asked what the problem was, she answered, there was no one at the door.
He saved me once. All year,
There's
and that was like
no other car in the lot. This happened at least 2 to 3 other times. I've always been a little sensitive to the paranormal, but I'm pretty skeptical by nature. I want to first rule out any other possible scenarios before jumping to the conclusion of something otherworldly. So I chalked these situations up to an electrical error. The building took on a whole new energy at night. Rooms of the facility that were well lit and normal during the day felt more ominous at night. I never wanted to be alone inside by myself after 8:30. That's when things got weird. Mostly, it's just the feeling that I'm in, or thinking I see something out of the corner of my eye. It's all just very unsettling. As one of our interns was leaving one night, she said she heard someone calling her from the parking lot. Psst, over here. There was no one there. One night, my co-worker went outside to finish up animal care in some of the outside enclosures that hadn't been done during the day, and I was left alone inside to finish prepping diets for some of the raccoon babies we had inside. We had a microwave above the counter, and I'd long since gotten used to seeing my silhouette in the reflective sheen on the door. I reached up to retrieve the bowl that I would put into the microwave and shut the door once I was done, only to see the reflection of a silhouette behind mine. I whipped around so fast I nearly dropped the bowl. No one was standing behind me, and when I looked back into the reflection, the silhouette wasn't there anymore. As I said previously, the trail of tears ran through the property, and at least 2 of my co-workers have made separate comments about seeing a woman in buckskin either walking through the hallway or standing in the laundry room. She always moves out of sight before anyone can try and say something to her. We have a separate little building on the property that's now a storage unit. It once housed interns that would stay on site overnight, but it's been a long time since it's been used for that purpose. I've always gotten a weird feeling whenever I'm near it. I've never been inside, and I hope I'll never have to. Anytime I walk past it, I feel incredibly unsettled, like there's someone standing behind me or watching me. Several months ago, I was informed we no longer have interns living in the building because late one night, a man walked in and stood in the doorway staring at the interns while they were trying to sleep. Since then, we've installed trail cams and security cameras all over the property. There's a million stories I can tell about this place, and maybe one day I will. So far, these are the only true paranormal feeling ones that I have to share. 3 years ago, I went on a residential trip to Castleton as part of the NCS. I applied to take part in it after I finished senior school. It was an amazing experience, and by far the best month of my life. Me and all of my friends were there, and I'd met this boy that I liked at the time. We spent a lot of time getting to know each other, and eventually we decided to go off in the forest on the last night in the residential. We go off walking about and decide to sit down at what I can only explain to be a fence step, a step to get from one side of the fence to another. We sat on one step each while facing opposite each other. I was facing the forest and he was facing the plain field behind me. For some reason, we got an eerie feeling as we were alone, and he started talking about his grandmother's death and had a tear in his eye. All of a sudden, I noticed this 7-foot figure behind the trees clasping onto the thick and tall tree trunk whilst peering around and staring
Alright,
at
where
me
were
and this
we?
boy. I looked in
Well,
utter
I'm about
shock,
to invade
as did he, and we
fucking
both saw it at the same time.
Montezuma.
I can only explain that it was a 7-foot tall man that was in perfect physical proportion for his size. He appeared see-through, but white and cloudy in the shape of a man, like a shadow, but in like a vape cloud color. And although he had no features and expressions, we both saw him stare at us. When he realized we had seen him, he began to run to the right of me before compacting himself into an orb and zooming out of the forest. The next day, one of the other girls who believed in all the supernaturalistic things had come up to me and asked if I saw something, to which I replied yes, only for her to say, "Yeah, I saw an apparition of a man that was see-through and had white cloud shadow on Monday. He was in front of this forest when I saw him from my window." This was by far the most amazing experience in my life, and I know exactly what I saw. I remember it like it was yesterday. I did try to do some research to see if it was true, but I could not find any evidence of this place being haunted. Still to this day, just thinking about it makes me shiver. I was walking home from school as a young teenager / preteen along a rural, heavily wooded road, and I passed one of 2 dilapidated hunting cabins visible from the roadside. They hadn't been used since the early 20th century, save as popular locations for kids to explore. I saw a group of 3 kids who looked slightly older than me, and who were dressed in what struck me as strangely formal fashion. I distinctly remember a red bow tie, and all 3 were in dress shirts and a dress blouse. 2 boys and 1 girl. I watched them walk into the cabin. The boys appeared to be goading the girl in. She was playful, resisting and giggling, and they didn't seem particularly sinister. But I was curious as I didn't know them, and there weren't a lot of kids in the general vicinity of where I lived. So I went up to the cabin. I couldn't have arrived more than 30 seconds after they did, including a brief, "Is this creepy of me?" kind of pause. When I look inside, the place was empty. It had a single room, no closet space, and no furniture to hide in. There were old bed springs, but the fabric had long rotted away. There was no attic or basement area. I'd seen this space under the cabin before. There was no exit, except for a high window which was narrow, and I seriously doubt the 3 of them could have fit there, let alone in that span of time. I wrote this off at the time, as my mind playing tricks on me. Sometime later, I would come to learn about the 3 kids who had, decades earlier, lived in the area. 2 boys and a girl. They were known to have spent a long time exploring the old cabins, family graveyards, and Indian caves that were dotted in the local woods. One day the girl vanished after telling a friend that she was going off on one such mini adventure. Both boys swore up and down that they had not met up with her on that day. Her disappearance was never solved, and I'm 100% certain that I was not aware of this story at the time when I witnessed the vanishing teenagers.
8 turns
There
and
is
I
an
get
old
my
legend
hangers,
in
bro.
Virginia of a road in Yorktown
Nice.
called
Build some
Crawford Road.
airstrips and shit.
There are tons of ghost stories
And you'll need an
about that
aircraft
road.
carrier to carry them across
One
the
being
ocean.
an African-American lady that hung herself off the bridge, and can still be seen hanging herself off the bridge if you go under and look behind you. There are other stories of soldiers walking down the road, lights in the distance, and cars stalling when you park under the bridge. There are a lot more stories that you can look up on your own, but this is the story of me and my friends' experiences down that road. I was personally not a believer in ghosts, because I never saw one until that night. So to start the day, we were talking about some paranormal experiences. Me and West mentioned that we had never had a paranormal experience before. So West was determined to have one tonight, and wanted to know of a haunted location. I remembered a friend of mine that lived in Yorktown telling me of the legends of Crawford Road, and I brought it up to the group. We checked the time it would take us to get there, and we thought to kill time until it got dark. All the while, we're reading up different stories online to see what we were getting ourselves into. Needless to say, everyone was pretty excited, but we were not prepared for what would happen. Once night hits, we go down the road, and we don't see anything unusual, as many other cars were also going down the road, and there was a cop sitting at the top of the bridge. So, we decided to go get some food while we waited a bit longer for the road to be less congested, and for the cop to leave. An hour later, we go back down the road once we get to the bridge, and there's another group of people on the road, looking to see what they can find. We chat for a bit, and they say that they haven't seen anything. So our group...
Oh my god. Boo.
the bridge to see what we can find. We're all up there, and we don't really see anything besides a strange symbol on the road and your typical graffiti. We see a car coming, and we didn't want to get caught. So
You said you should have a
me,
little bit better production
West,
now.
and Abel go
I
back
got
down while
their
Natalie and Jay stay up
cities
there
I got
and turn
all
their
these
lights on.
cities,
After less
all but
than 2
one
minutes, Natalie and
switched over.
Jay run down,
Sweet.
freaking the hell out, saying they both saw a tall woman dressed in white walk out of the woods into the bridge. Obviously, like idiots, our group walks up to see. We couldn't see her when we went up there, but as we looked down onto the road to see if we could see anything, all of a sudden we hear an angry scream in the distance. We all book it and get the hell out of there, and the other group bail as well as soon as they heard the scream. We start to drive away from the bridge, and being determined to see an actual ghost, all of us had our windows down and were taking constant pictures while driving. Eventually we hear Jay, panicked, tell us to drive faster as he's sticking his head out of the window. Once we get far enough, he says that he saw something on 4 legs running after the car. This was only the start, and we begin to look at the pictures we had taken and watch the video West had been taking the whole time that we were down there. In the video, when we heard the scream and start to run, we could clearly hear a gargled cackle that we did not hear at that moment, and the pictures were even worse. Some of them were of nothing, but a lot of Jay's photos had a mysterious glow in them, and another one of our group's pictures were completely white, whilst the rest were fine. In some of the photos, we could even see a strange blue box in both Jay and Abel's pictures, which was made even worse because they were on opposite sides of the car. And the worst one is when Natalie took a picture of the side view mirror and could clearly see a face with 2 black eyes. We were properly freaked the hell out, but we decided to drive down the road one last time to
Do you
do the
know
same
where
thing
Saladin
and
is
take
on
pictures
the
on
map?
all sides of the car.
We seen him yet?
While going down
I
it,
don't think so.
we didn't see anything of interest until at the bridge, when Jay said he saw someone in white waving
maybe
at the
we
car.
have.
But the pictures were a completely different story, as one of the pictures that Natalie got was of the four-legged creature sitting on the top of a broken fence post, like it was waiting for us. After that, we decided to get out of there and finally get home. When we get back, we can clearly see a large handprint and a small handprint on the window on Jay's side. We also see a multitude of other handprints on the car, as well as scratch marks, and on the back of the car, the same symbols that were on the top of the bridge. When we got home, I looked into further detail about the stories from others, and found out that the scream was something of a call to the others on the road, which would explain the creature chasing us. But I haven't been able to find a single one about a four-legged creature chasing them. This had to be one of the scariest nights of my life, and we are all planning to visit Crawford Road again to see what else we might find. For a little background, my family is a bit scattered. I live in Nebraska, while my two half-sisters live with my stepmom, though I'm not sure what she'd be considered now, since her and my father are divorced. I live in Nebraska, while my two half-sisters live with my stepmom in Washington, though I'm not sure what she'd be considered now, since her and my father are divorced. And my dad lives with his new wife and my stepsister in a small town outside of Dallas, Texas. As you can imagine, it's a little hard trying to see everyone within a year. However, my sisters were visiting my dad over the summer, and I was able to get a week off in order to go see my family. Since we'd all been down there, and since my sisters and I love creepy stuff, we decided to check out one of the biggest urban legends in Texas, Goatman Bridge. Now, it was difficult convincing my dad to let us go. He's super religious and very against haunted things, demons, or attempting to contact ghosts. He's also not a fan of how far the alleged haunted bridge was away, and didn't necessarily want us to go. So I did what any reasonable 21-year-old would do. I told him we were going out to eat after a fun-filled day at Six Flags, then drove my little sisters out to the little town of Denton and to the old Alton Bridge where the supposed Goatman was. For me and my sisters, getting to the bridge was a little tricky. My GPS wasn't updating fast enough, so we wound up missing the turning that we had to do and did a massive loop on the country road in order to get back to the pathway for Old Alton Bridge, since the bridge is closed to vehicles. There was a soccer game going on in the field about a mile or two away from the turnoff for the gravel road to the bridge, but other than that, everything else was shut down for the night and not many cars traveled the roads. When we finally managed to make the turn down the gravel hill and park, we ran into a group of adults who told us there was no Goatman that night, to be safe and to check out the creepy path off to the left. My sister and I thanked the group and ducked under the metal fence as the group left in their pickup truck. It was about 10:30 or so at night, and the forest was eerie still, though we could hear the cicadas chirping. We all felt some
well,
sort
yeah,
of
because
heavy
they're allied,
weight
but
pressing
I'm
down on
really at
us,
war with
and
Movember.
it felt like we were being watched as we pressed further into the woods. The flashlight of our phones were dull against the thick shrubbery of the forest, and I almost expected something to be lurking in the shadows, though I kept assuring myself I was psyching myself out. We made it to the start of the bridge, and I have to admit, I was pretty spooked. It was so dark you could barely see the end of it, and the feeling of being watched felt stronger. I brushed it off once again, as my own paranoia and me and my sisters continued to walk down the bridge, commenting about how cool and creepy it was, and reading the writing and satanic symbols scrawled onto the bridge. As we were walking and I flashed my light to the end, I could have sworn I saw a black mass standing at the end. But when I looked again, it was gone. I also heard something moving around in the woods back from where we came from, and in the creek down below, but neither me or my sisters saw anyone else. However, this is when things started to get a little strange. My sister Cadence was by herself over where I thought I saw the shadow, and she told me she saw what looked like an eye watching her from underneath the bridge. My other sister Kayla felt physically sick and thought she heard a voice, but she couldn't really make it out. I decided it was time to leave the bridge and maybe check out the pathway the group was telling us about. And as we were walking towards the path, both mine and my sister's flashlight went out. I got a little freaked, but told myself it was fine and turned on the phone flashlight, while my sister struggled to turn hers on. And as we neared the path, I saw it, standing by the entrance of the forest, about 20 or so feet away, was a tall, thin, black, shadowy mass. It looked slightly transparent, but was also somehow solid, and looked like it was almost flickering or wavering. It's hard to explain. It looked like it had long, sharp claws, and it looked like it was holding something in its hand, but I couldn't make out what it was. Its eyes were hardly visible, but I felt it watching us. The presence felt evil. Now, I didn't move at first. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, so I took a step closer to see if I could make it out. But when I did, the thing moved, and the slight unease I felt went into complete panic mode. I don't think I've ever screamed so loudly before in my life. I told my sisters to run, and at first they thought I was joking. But when I kept screaming and told them to go back to the car, they
Oh my
realized
God, I can choose a
I was
religion?
being serious.
Oh,
And we all ran back to the car that was parked on the gravel road. I took one last look behind my shoulder and saw the shadow running towards us, but then it vanished. I turned my attention back to what was in front of me and slid under the metal bar and fence, unlocked the car, and tore out of the makeshift parking lot. I was shaking, crying, and could hardly breathe. My body felt like it was on fire. As we approached the main road, we could make out two men dressed in white running to the forest we came from, and I wondered if it was because they heard me screaming. The hour ride home was silent, and my mind was racing trying to figure out what that thing was. I kept trying to find a logical explanation to what I saw, but I was grasping at straws, and I knew it. Part of me wanted to go back and figure out exactly what it was, and the other part of me wanted to stay as far away as possible and just be content with not knowing. Either way, I was creeped out, and I genuinely feared for my safety.
After saving with customized car insurance from Liberty Mutual, I customized everything, like Marco's backpack.
And my sister's safety. I never expected to find anything on that bridge. I thought it was just a creepy urban legend made up by locals, and that there was nothing to be afraid of. But that night proved me wrong. And though I doubt what I saw was the Goat Man, I can't shake the feeling that there is something at Old Alton Bridge that is truly malicious. This is my uncle's story. He lives in West Virginia, one of the more remote states in the eastern United States. While his main house is in town, he also has a small cabin up on Spruce Knob, where he and my aunt would go during the summers. This cabin is very remote and accessed only by jeep trails and isn't connected to the electrical grid. So my aunt and uncle decide to take advantage of a 3-day weekend sometime in the late 80s and headed out to the cabin for some fly fishing and relaxation in the woods. When they arrived, my aunt went out to sketch some, while my uncle unpacked and built a fire in the fireplace, as it was already getting dark. As night became fall, my uncle noted how unusually quiet the woods were. He'd been camping, canoeing, and backpacking all over the world, and he still says that this is the quietest he'd ever heard them. He and my aunt packed everything up and went to bed late. Sometime around midnight, my uncle awoke to a strange thumping and scratching noise coming from outside. He thought it was probably a bear or coyote trying to get at the dog, and he grabbed his .444 Marlin to go deal with it. As he pulled the gun out from its case, the door to the outside swung open, and a large hairy shape that was vaguely humanoid appeared silhouetted in the moonlight. He said he never got quite a good look at it, but the one thing he really remembers is the overpowering smell, a stench of decay and two glowing red-yellow eyes. He quickly emptied the .444, and while he didn't get a kill shot, he did scratch the beast's arm, which caused it to run squealing into the woods. He and my aunt immediately grabbed their things, got in their Bronco, and hightailed it out of there. Whatever my uncle saw never really bothered them again, and when he returned in the morning with more people and more firepower, he found little evidence of any intrusion, except for a single strange clawed footprint in the front of the cabin and claw marks on the door. I don't know whether to believe my uncle or not, as he's known for telling tall tales. However, unlike his other stories, he was completely serious when he told this one, and my aunt backed him up. This story has always deeply disturbed me, as I too spend a lot of time in the woods, and I will be making a trip up to their cabin this summer, so perhaps I will see this strange beast too. My husband is from Mississippi, and I'm from California. We met in Los Angeles, and when we first started getting serious about 8 years ago, he decided he wanted to bring me home to meet the family. Being a history buff, I asked to see the Civil War battlefield while we were there, because we didn't have anything like that in California. Nothing preserved anyway. So we went on a mini road trip, just the two of us, to Vicksburg to visit the battlefield there. A lot of it had been taken back by forest, and there's a road that goes through the woods so you can get to each part of the battlefield. It was a weekday, so we were basically the only people around. As we were driving, we took a turn, and that's when stuff got weird. I noticed that the sounds of the forest were suddenly gone. No sounds of trees in the winds, no birds. It was eerily quiet, like someone had a volume remote and hit mute. Also, if you hadn't picked up on this yet, it was the middle of the day. I didn't know if my husband was experiencing the same thing, and since we were fairly new into our relationship, I didn't want to scare him off with any talks of paranormal stuff. I kept my eyes out on the window, and he slowed the car to a stop without saying anything. All of a sudden, over the radio, I start hearing men's voices in my ears. I still wasn't looking over, and was sort of frozen. My husband slowly turned down and then off the radio. It was apparent now that he had heard them too. Then he turned off the car, and the voices got even louder, as if we were standing in the middle of a group of men, and they could see us, but we couldn't see them. I can't remember exactly what they were saying, but we both said afterwards we had the heaviest feeling that they were talking about us, and they seemed as surprised to see us as we were to see them. As if I flipped a switch. I have no idea how long we were sitting there for, but then all of a sudden the whispers were gone. The sounds of nature returned at full volume, with birds chirping, trees, and even some deer crossed in front of the car, as if they sensed the coast was clear. That's when another car pulled up behind us. My husband quickly turned the car back on and we moved on. We were both flabbergasted. we had our first paranormal discussion as a couple. What's odd is both of us had previously in our lives been heavily into the paranormal. Him leaning towards the very religious aspect of it.
Could have sworn.
At the
we had
time this
barbers.
happened, he had left the church and was a non-believer in anything beyond. I was a huge skeptic and had actually been grieving the loss of my faith in the idea that something else was out there. It was an experience that rocked both of us, and neither of us had any idea of the other's beliefs when it came to this stuff. So what do you all think? Did we hit a sort of time slip and confuse the hell out of some Civil War soldiers? Or was it just a residual haunting that we happened upon? The church I used to attend to had a program where you could volunteer as a Sunday school teacher. I've always really liked teaching kids ever since I was young, and thought I'd be perfect for this position. I applied and got the job. Even though it didn't pay, I was more than happy to speak about young children and explain the messages of the gospel. But religion aside, this is about the spooky stuff that happened. Now, bordering our church is a graveyard and a large forest. I never really went in there before, but a few other of the girls who had different Sunday school classes and I would often chat when the
Hey,
lessons
we
and
should become
mass
friends with
ended.
Rome. We might be able
We'd
to
have a
ally.
great time just conversing in the hall
Yeah?
and talking to each other and eating cookies and stuff. One afternoon,
Yeah.
since we'd become good friends at this point, did we decide that we wanted to go into the woods just to have a nice chat. It was mostly to talk about boys without anyone overhearing us, and so giggling away, we went into the woods. We'd never been there before, but it looked quite safe and undisturbed, so in we went, despite our feet getting muddy. We didn't go in very far, and as we sat down on a comfortable log and tried making conversation, did Abby, one of the girls in our group, scream. She was facing the other way. We all turned around and saw a dark, transparent shape floating in our direction. It was coming at us with speed, and without a moment to spare, did we all hightail it back to the church. My brother kept laughing at me when I told him this story. He said it was just a garbage bag floating in the wind, but we all knew better. It was transparent, and there was definitely a dark and malicious presence with it. All of us saw it, and next week after Sunday school, when we tried to catch up, did I ask them questions, and they all say that they saw this dark, floating entity rushing towards us, and that most of all, it was transparent, kind of staticky. There 1 second, not the next, and then back again. It's so hard to explain correctly. As you can imagine, we never returned to those woods, and we never told anyone else, other than me telling my brother, about this experience, for fear of sounding ridiculous. This particular event happened to me when I was around 10 or 11. I had been visiting my grandpa's cabin in Big Bear Lake several times a year ever since I was a child. This isn't the first paranormal event I've experienced there, but it is definitely the most memorable. A little backstory. My grandma's cabin sits at the end of a cul-de-sac right at the end of a vast, mostly unpopulated, aside from a few other cabins, stretch of forest. No matter what I do or how I'm feeling, I always have a very strong sensation that I'm being watched when I'm in many of the rooms of the cabin alone, day or night. I've seen shadow creatures many times in this cabin. I've heard strange knocking, whispering, and just generally feel like there's something else there with us. My grandma has told me of similar experiences and has warned me before that if I ever get a strange feeling when I'm walking into the forest, to go home immediately. But she never elaborated. Anyway, me and my dad and my uncle were walking on a trail that we've been on hundreds of times before, when we reach the first peak of a hill that we usually like to stop and look out at the view from. My dad and uncle wanted to keep hiking for a bit, but I decided to go back to the cabin on my own, as it was only 5 to 10 minutes away. I head down the usual path that I go on, and I'm not thinking too much about it when I realize that I have no idea where I am. Everything looked the same as usual, but something was wrong. The normal path was different in a way that I can't explain. It seemed to be 10 times as long as usual, and everything was silent, and there was absolutely no wildlife around me, not even a squirrel. I kept having all of these morbid thoughts coming into my head about how I was lost forever, or how some sort of creature was going to swoop in on me. Every 10 minutes or so, I'd end up a part of the trail that I definitely recognized, only to be in a completely alien area moments later. The path kept winding and winding downhill, and the sun was setting pretty rapidly. I had to have been walking in the direction of the cabin for more than an hour, because I remember I was checking my watch and panicking. At this point, I just accepted that I was lost. I finally made it down to the street and was relieved to be able to orient myself. But I was only one street away from the cabin, although I should have been much further. I was expecting my father and uncle to be home by now, and for my parents to be worried about me being gone so long. But instead, my mother asked me why I came back so soon. I asked how long they'd been out there for, and my mother said that we'd only walked about 15 minutes longer from where I'd left them. I don't know if I'm reading into this too much, and if I was just a kid with different perceptions, but something felt very off about the whole ordeal. January 12th, 2019. It's 8 p.m, and I'm gonna be honest, I chose to go out on this particular night because my town was having a little ghost tour at the haunted hospital. I was lonely and wanted to at least see the others having fun. It was 8 p.m. when I left the house and planned to be back within an hour. I was having a routine of circling my town in the evening because I just liked patrolling, and there's always something creepy after nightfall. I made my visit to the haunted hospital, and once I got there I saw flashlights inside the windows and heard laughter. That's nice, I thought. Seeing others have fun made me smile, and got rid of some of the loneliest feelings I was having. This was the halfway point of my walk, and I started my second half heading home. There were some woods on the opposite side of town now, but nothing impressive until I got to the last quarter of my walk. Now I was passing the baseball
You
fields
might want
on
to
my
sneak
left,
in there and take
with
out that
large
bandit
wheat
camp
fields on
that's
my
over
right.
on the continent.
This wheat
next to you.
field used to be a large extension of the woods, but was cleared out for growing wheat.
Oh yeah?
I continued again,
They have musket
and
men.
crossed the small bridge that went over a creek, and passed another
Thankfully,
section
they've
of
been at
woods.
war pretty consistently.
I was
with
now
those
heading
areas.
towards an old metal building that has recently been turned into a place for making gates and fences. It was around 9 p.m. now. This building had 2 small white houses inside it, and a stretch of dirt
Sorry,
road
one
wrapping
sec.
around the back side of it before returning to a normal asphalt road. Now at night, this place seems pretty scary. But this was one of my favorite places to hang out at night, and is a normal path I take my walks through. As I was coming up to the dirt road, I saw a very tall 8 to 10 foot pale figure, with lanky arms, almost dragging the ground, about 40 feet ahead of me, briskly walk from the white house to the woods. I stopped walking. was that? I thought. Its size confused me so much that I had forgotten my previous encounter with a smaller version of it. After a few minutes of standing there, I convinced myself to continue walking forwards. I mean, I was an adventurous person, and there's no
What are
way
you
I
doing,
was
Remy?
just going to turn around and
What
go
you mean?
home when I saw something so
Uh,
odd.
like,
currently,
like-
I'm just
Not even 15 seconds
well,
into
sending
walking
builders everywhere and
forwards,
basically just
this sudden
upgrading
heavy
everything. I gotta
sense
give
of
people
dread
amenities. They're about to
overcame me,
rebel against me.
like a giant weight crashing
Oh,
down.
yeah.
Gotta keep the
My
people happy, I
instincts were
guess.
telling me something was really wrong. I turned my iPhone light on and shined it at the woods. Nothing. I kept walking while keeping my head on a swivel, looking in all directions to keep my surroundings in check. About the 5th or 6th time, I looked at the woods, and I saw it. A huge, bleached, white humanoid figure, crouched on all fours. It was easily still 5 to 6 feet tall, even though it was bent over. Its black eyes paralyzed me. It had a big, round, bald head, and an extremely emaciated body, void of all hair, with very long, almost dislocated-looking arms and legs. Its legs were like a flamingo bird's at the knee, as it bent backwards instead of forwards. I took all of this in a matter of seconds. Suddenly, it reminded me of a praying mantis when it swayed back and forth while staring at me, if deciding
okay, bro?
whether to attack me.
Yeah, I'm just
This
fighting a war.
broke me out of my trance, as I ran as fast as I could. I didn't look back until I had run a block. Out of breath and scared as hell, I finally took a glance back. I didn't see anything in sight. I didn't hear it chase me either. Maybe it was just stalking those people in those 2 little white houses and waiting for me to go away. Maybe it didn't want anything to do with me. But that wasn't the end. I got home, took a shower, and turned on the lights before I hopped into bed, when suddenly there was something tapping at my window. 3 taps and nothing else. I laid in my bed that night, wondering whether it had followed me home or not. A string of bad luck ensued afterwards the following weeks. I was constantly burning stuff on the stove that was relatively easy to make, and I was an excellent cook. My dog started going nuts at night, growling and barking in the living room and at the front door, which she had never done before. And finally, I got deathly sick for 3 weeks straight, with no sure sign of what I had gotten. 103 fever, vomiting with blood, diarrhea with blood, sneezing, coughing, sore throats, migraines, nerve spasms, a stuffy and dry nose, severe stomach aches, and aches everywhere, especially in my bones. I've had smaller strings of bad luck before, after hearing its mimicking cry, trying to lure me into the woods, but it has never been this extreme. And now, I don't go into the woods anymore. I spent a number of years performing on the Renaissance Fair circuit. I've traveled across the country, directed troops, performed as a swordsman, and breathed fire. Most times, I've lived in a tent, in a small tent city on the fair site. Sometimes, if I was lucky, there would be some place I would crash, like a booth or even inside a stage. I was at the Ohio Renaissance Fair, and I managed to get the key to the Gloriana stage door. It was perfect. A back door padlocked from the outside, but the stage door and windows locked from the inside. I'd just leave a window unlocked so that I could come and go if someone knocked on the window. I could still get in. So the place was nice and secure at night, and that was a real plus. Even better was that it was a 2-story structure, and there was even a hammock upstairs. Since I performed on the stage during the day, my moving a few things into the backstage area wasn't viewed askance by my fellow performers. I had my sleeping bag, a blanket, and my US mail bag that I carried my clothes in, and which doubled as a pillow. I figured I was good to go for the entire season. I spent a good portion of the evenings up top of the stage, smoking cigarettes and looking out over the fair sight. The view behind the stage was just overgrown with trees and thick bushes. It came up to 8 to 10 inches from the stage door, so it was a bit claustrophobic back there. But looking out over the stage was really nice at night. I spent quite a few nights up there enjoying the view, smoking and just being at peace, until the night of the creepy. It was a clear night, and I'd been drinking with the jousters before making my way back to the Gloriana. As I was walking behind the stage, I heard something rustling in the brush behind me. It unnerved me quite a bit, so I hurriedly moved around to the front of the stage, opened up the window, crawled in, and locked things up tight. With my flashlight, I checked things out to make sure nothing had been disturbed, but everything looked like I had left it, or at least hadn't been disturbed enough for me to notice. Locked in and secure, I climbed up the ladder and out onto the stage's upper balcony. There wasn't much of a moon that night, and so it was kind of dark. It was a pretty chilly autumn night, so I wasn't planning on staying out too long, but I enjoyed looking out over my kingdom, looking at the lights and listening to the distant laughter from other wrenfolk. The only other sound was the common night sounds, crickets, and other things that buzzed and whirred in the dark. I was on my second smoke, a Clove Sambonera 234. These things can be smoked for about 30 minutes or so, and so I'd savor one of these things over a few nights. I had just taken my second or third drag when everything in the woods behind me went quiet. Even buzzed, like I was, I noticed it. Now here is the point where I tell you my first name is Bob. Growing up, I was called Bobby, and I grew to adulthood and dropped the childish second syllable and really came to hate it. From back in the undergrowth somewhere, I heard something, and I first thought it was a bullfrog. It was the deep croaking sound coming from fairly close to the stage's small backyard. I smoked a bit longer, but something was really nagging at the back of my mind, and I was getting tense. So I snuffed the clove out and turned to look over the back. The rest of the night sounds were still silent, only the croaking and an occasional rustling in the bushes. I stood there, listening for a bit longer, before I realized that I wasn't hearing a bullfrog at all. I was hearing a human voice. If you ever made that croaking frog sound as a kid, where you would rasp out the word ribbit while slowly inhaling so it sort of breaks and pops, that's what I was hearing. Worse still was that the voice was croaking, Bobby. Well, I was sober as a judge in a matter of seconds. I ducked inside and grabbed my flashlight, one of those really heavy mag lights that can double as a billy club, at least if you don't care about it working as a flashlight after, and started shining it around the back. I couldn't see anyone out there, but while I was looking for the source of the voice, a second voice joined in, and then a third. "Who's there?" I shouted. Not exactly original, but it was pretty germane to my thoughts at the moment. Nothing. Just 3 voices croaking out my name. I got that cold, creeped out feeling up and down my spine, and ducked inside and went upstairs. Now, we Rennies generally have a knife of some sort, and mine was a simple dagger with a 5-inch blade. It was cheap pot metal and didn't really keep an edge, but it was good enough to eat with during the fair day. But you also sure wouldn't want to be stabbed with it. That said, having a knife and a flashlight didn't fill me with a whole lot of confidence, and I sure as hell didn't plan on running out into the back to see who was there. Then the scratching started. While the croaking voices continued calling my name, I heard the sound of fingernails dragging up and down the backstage door. Sure, it was padlocked, but it wasn't like I was the only person with a key either. That was enough for me. I slowly slid back the latch on one of the stage windows and quietly swung it open. I crept out onto the stage, still hearing the croaking and scratching behind me. I'm not proud of it, but I ran like hell. I jogged across the fair site and back to the Jouster World, a loft above one of the site barns. Come morning, I went back to the stage and found all of the windows open, and the back door was unlocked and hanging open as well. Someone had gone through all my stuff and thrown it all over the backstage area, inside and out. I stayed with the Jousters for the next 2 weeks before going on the road and heading down to the Texas Renaissance Fair. To this day, I have no idea who or what was out there, and so in my mind, it will always just be the creepy. About 10 years ago, a friend of mine and I were browsing the interwebs in the living room of a house my father built here on the coast of North Carolina. The setup is a shotgun house, with a lot of the open space on one end, and the living room occupies the same area as the dining/kitchen. While my friend is hogging the computer, messing around with my mum's Windows XP settings more than likely.
Brussels declared war on
Nothing
us?
was particularly out of place, and I was feeling
They
bored.
levied the
I
city-state.
looked
He
at the
paid them
entryway
money
to the hall/kitchen,
to
and
fight
suddenly,
me.
and
It
soundless,
won't matter. I have
a
Renaissance
7-foot-tall
walls.
person walks into view. I'm fixated on it, as there hadn't been anything I had ever seen quite like it. There was a sense of masculinity to its shape, but overall its features were blurred by a shadowy kind of semi-static. I hadn't heard anyone come in, and it was dark anyway, so I thought maybe my eyes weren't focused, and that this was someone who had broken in. It turned its face to me. I shifted in my chair and could do little else before it did the strangest thing. I felt like it focused on me in that moment, and did this kind of single or half jumping jack with all its limbs spread out. My visual perception of it inverted, and the area it occupied became 100% see-through, and I could see my kitchen through it. But everything else became an opaque, staticky rainbow of colors emitting from its form. I felt a surge of adrenaline through my system, and all my hairs stood on end as the image faded from my vision. I was immobilized, with my attempting to comprehend what had happened in less than 10 seconds. I was stuck with my first rationalization: intruder. I ran into the kitchen and grabbed a long, thick blade, running through the house, checking every closet, corner, and behind every door, while my puzzled friend watched. I asked if he had seen anything, recanting my brief experience. He gave me a funny look, and we went back to the computer after I finished my sweep. I was on edge, but nothing else happened. I have long since looked up information on what it could have been, and about the history of our property. As far as I can tell, most of our place had been used as trash burning spots for a cabin that had long since been torn down, and other houses built over it. The best I can figure, if it wasn't just my imagination, it's likely something like a shadow person. But then again, I don't know. What do you guys think? I live in Illinois. The first event happened in late August of 2016, while we were running late one night.
So what do you
We
think,
both
bro?
ran
Nuclear
cross
submarines
country
and fucking like
track
jet
in high
fighters and
school.
shit.
and still do so.
Yeah,
to this
that'll
day.
work.
Well, I'll be,
My friend
yeah,
worked a job
yeah. And
that
if you
would be
concentrate on
getting
just like land
sometimes till
units
10
or whatever,
11 at night. So we
okay,
would
we'll just
typically
blow
Sieging
go
everybody.
land
running
units.
very
Yeah, we'll
late.
just blow everybody out of the
This had
water,
been
bro. I'll
happening
just
for a
be air
few
support.
years at this point, so we
Just
knew our
fucking
path
go hard.
very well. On the local running path, down 2.5 blocks into the woods that butts up against a large creek. At some points on the path in the woods, you can see houses and a park, but other times it starts to get a bit more secluded, and we aren't talking like the wilderness here though. There is wildlife in the area, mostly raccoons and skunks and random beavers and the occasional deer. Over the years we have seen more and more coyotes around the streets, but never in the woods. Given to our location, there isn't a local bear or wolf population, and this is a critical detail to the story. We meet to go running one night at around 11:15. I'm not entirely sure of the exact time, but it was fairly late, and the thunderstorms were on the way according to the weather app. For this reason, both of us left our phones in the car. The one time we have, and we've regretted it ever since, and decided to run pretty fast to make it back before the storm. In the woods, it is mostly a wood chip trail until you get to 200 meters from our turnaround spot, a water pumping station, as the town has had flood problems recently, where it turns to asphalt. We run to the turnaround spot and start running back, as this was about a quarter of a mile from the wood chips to turn around and back. I would estimate it took around 2 to 3 minutes, given a slight stop at our turnaround. On our way back, we noticed what can only be described to this day as an upside-down trash can with a fuzzy, blurred outline in the middle of the path, right before its transition into wood chips. If I had to guess, I would say it were around 3 to 4 feet tall, perhaps on the shorter side, and I again need to stress that this was only 2 to 3 minutes after we had our first run by, and come back to that exact spot. This thing had appeared there in that short period. We stopped running as this was rather peculiar and not there when we ran by the first time, but we continued walking closer. We thought maybe someone moved something in front of us as a prank, as the only people that frequented the woods other than us at the time were teenagers smoking or drinking, but they are loud and can be heard from very far away. This thing was dead silent, and we had continued to get closer until we were around 50-ish feet away, and it started to move. When I say move, it was standing still, but as if it was swaying part of its body completely left and then completely right. We had seen a red glare on either side when it turned its head, like the lit end of a cigarette when someone inhales. Not a very bright glow, but enough to be seen in the pitch black, as there are no lights in the area. Talking between us, we begin to become very uneased, as this was unlike any person/animal behavior we had ever seen. This thing made no sound, and we were worried it was some dangerous animal. So we started backing up slowly and made a run for it. It did not follow us, but stayed in place, moving in the same manner. We ran as fast as we could back to my car and drove over, arriving approximately 25 to 30 minutes later, as the storm had started to come in. Looking around, we found no trace of it whatsoever. No broken branches in the woods, no due to believe a large creature in the woods visited us. Neither of us could explain it, and after failing to find an observation, we tucked it away. Fast forward to the end of December of that year. We were on another run, one of our first at night since the incident. And when we got to the pumping station, we had found a disturbing sight. We discovered what appeared to be a dead deer leg lodged in the chain link fence, pretty much completely picked clean, with the exception of some skin and hair at the hooves at the bottom. The whole thing was pretty intact from thigh to hoof. Shortly after, I decided to bring a different friend to these woods who had the ability to see spirits, to see if he could discover anything. As we walked by the spot, we saw the trash can. He was startled and focused towards the woods. I asked him what he saw, and without me telling him any other information prior to our arrival, besides having some sort of experience here, he described it as a cloaked figure around the same height as what I saw, with beady red eyes staring at us. He said once it noticed that he could see it, it ran quickly into the woods. In the weeks afterwards, my running friend was back out on the trail, only to discover other bones that we believed to be missing parts to the dead deer. He first discovered a spinal column with rib ends just laying in the grass next to the pavement and woods. He carefully moved it to be with the other deer leg to keep track of them all in one place. 3 days later, in the same exact spot, he discovered what appeared to be a neck vertebrae, and then a few days after, in the exact same spot, another bone, one which we do not know which part of the body it came from. At first, we were thinking wild animals when we experienced this creature, but these other occurrences led us to believe something paranormal was afoot in these woods. Does anyone have any explanation for what may be happening here? I can't find answers, and I am desperate for any information whatsoever. I lived in a small city in central Michigan. There is a city park with a forest directly behind my house. For being at the edge of a city, it's a decently large forest. You could say the forest is split by a very thin clearing that cuts it into two. A small part that has walking paths, and then a much bigger part with not very many paths. One summer evening 3 years ago, out of boredom, 6 friends and I decided to go out to the bigger part and play hide and seek. Yes, I know, 15 to 18-year-olds playing hide and seek, but whatever. I was the seeker and quickly found my friends, Emily, Alice, and Brody. But the other 3 went pretty deep into the woods. We decided to split off to look for them. Emily and I went one way, while Alice and Brody went another. Emily and I eventually split off ourselves, and I ran into Alice and Brody. We figured out everyone else was lost in the woods, and decided to stay where we were. The whole thing lasted about 2.5 hours. During that time we stayed put, and waited for everyone to find their way towards us. This is when the weird stuff started happening. Emily had called Alice several times and told us weird things were happening to her, but she wasn't able to say what due to a poor connection. A little while later, while it was pretty dark out, we saw a white light about 50 yards away from Alice, Brody and I in the trees. We called out thinking it was a phone light and that it was our friends, but we got no response, and for several minutes it just bobbed up and down in the trees, eventually vanishing. We figured that it couldn't have been another person because we didn't hear any footsteps or leaves rustling, and no one could have made it through the dark woods without a light. Immediately after, Brody swears he saw a face right next to him, staring at him, and disappear. By this point, we're freaked out. Later, I went back out to the clearing by myself because we thought Emily was there, and she wasn't. I saw 4 or 5 small red orbs of light circling around the bush. They were not fireflies or lights from a deer camp, as I checked several times. I met up with Alice and Brody and eventually Emily, and everyone else found us and we left the forest. While Emily was lost, she had her own experiences. At one point, she heard very loud footsteps all around her, even though there were no animals. She also saw what looked exactly like one of our other friends, Max, on the trail ahead of her, yet he wasn't anywhere near her the whole time. She also heard what clearly sounded like a boy and a girl whispering behind her, yet no one was there. Over the past few years, I've had other experiences out in these woods. One time when it was pitch black out, my friend and I saw 6 very large orbs of red light fly around us very fast, then disappear. I've seen other large yellow lights flare up and then go away, then flare up again like a lighter, except no one was there. They were way too big to be fireflies. I also heard a human-like moan right next to me. I booked it back home after hearing that, and another time I heard the same heavy footsteps that Emily heard all around me, but not a soul was there. I've definitely experienced some things out there, and I'm not sure if I want to go back. So I figured I'd share my experience living in a 200-year-old cabin. All these things happened over the span of the 3 years that I lived there, in the beginning of 2012. A childhood friend of mine from years back asked me if I would be her roommate. I needed out of my parents' house, and she needed a roommate, so it seemed like a good situation. Now for the house. Nestled in a suburban area was this cabin. The cabin dates back to sometime in the 1700s. The road the cabin is off of bears the same name as the original family of the house. They owned a large portion of the land that is now one of the largest cities in the US. Search American colonial cabin, and you'll see a swath of images that look like it. We originally think it used to be slave quarters, as this is tobacco country, and then we later found out it was a stable house. The stable house theory checks out, as our dog dug up a horseshoe once. I still have that horseshoe. Anyway, the night we moved in, I knew the place was eerie. No doors to the upstairs, which was my room, and no doors to the downstairs bedroom. Her bedroom was an addition that someone added in the 80s. The previous owners also added a much-needed kitchen and bathroom, as the original layout did not have either. Now that you've got a decent imagery of what I was working with, I'll start with why I'm sharing this. So, when moving in, I immediately felt a feeling of being watched. The house always felt dark, cold and moist, much like a cellar. It started with scratching. Every night I would be in bed, and I would wake up to this scratching directly underneath my bed by my head. At first I thought it was mice, but when I listened to it long enough I realized that the scratching was just a long draw, like a foot-long pull, then repeated. I just recovered my head, muffled my ears and closed my eyes. I was a 23-year-old man, by the way, and I felt like I was cowering, but I was not able to tussle with wood-scratching spirits. Alright, so one night I heard something. Normally, I would have been asleep at this time, but I was up late and heard it. It started on the ceiling on the far side of my room. Then it went down the wall, then scratched its way to directly underneath me.
One more turn and I got some planes.
The room and back
Nice.
A fighter and an air bomber.
Here's why it's not mice. My walls were solid wood.
Working
as
my
the
way
inside
through the
log
war
were the
with
same as
this
the
fucking guy.
The floor had no
I'm in the
space
atomic
between
era.
the
Would you
ceiling
like some
below and
backup?
the floor above. Like I said, it was an
Yeah,
old
you
cabin.
could come on this coast of
I got
Quilla.
scared and
It's
began
almost,
sleeping
that'll be his
downstairs.
last city.
My
Probably by the time
roommate,
you get
now
over here.
wife, asked what was up, and I told her. She said the same stuff
Quilla.
was going on when she was home alone.
Gotcha.
This was in the first week. Here's the creepy part. So when we moved in, I had to unscrew all the screws that the previous renters had to put into the windows. I had to unscrew one of the exterior doors that he had screwed shut, and we had to clean out the weird rabbit food from the oven. We had to write, "Doesn't live here," on hundreds of mail order catalogs the previous renter received. We always joke that the guy was a shut-in Satanist, but I don't think that we were far off. We both started sleeping downstairs in the living room and felt comfortable in numbers. The eerie feeling was easier to deal with if someone was with you. Until one night, I had a dream that a dark force was approaching me. It was in third person, as if I were watching myself sleep. The entity started looming over my head, and all the while I felt a pressure building in my head and a high-pitched ringing in my ears. It got so intense that I sprung up from my sleep and looked around the room. About a second later, the TV shut off. Just cut off. We'd been having problems with the TV randomly turning on and off, but this time was too far coincidental to be brushed off like everything else. Also, I knew I went to bed with the TV turned off. I cut it off. So why was it on in the first place? We started sleeping in her room after that night. She told me nothing really happened in her room. Maybe because it was an addition. I don't know. Well, our ghosts played matchmaker, and now we're trying for a kid. Married for 5 years. Once I was upstairs reading, and I was falling asleep, and my windows started opening and shutting. I was already at my wit's end with the spirit. So the next day, I set up the same situation. Same thing. Funny. Never does it when I'm not there. I ended up yelling to leave us alone, and that I was tired of it. And holy smokes, it kind of worked. For a while, anyway. Then when I was home alone, the clock started going off as soon as my wife would leave. The drawers would open, and there'd be banging on the front door. Then, over time, it just stopped. Slowed down, ultimately, to nothing. I guess as I matured there, it stopped messing with me. Today my in-laws live there. They were the landlords, and the home is cute, homely, and warm. I spend time there alone and no longer feel any malice. It's a weird experience, and I would do it all over again if I had to. Our third roommate wasn't your typical, "I'll get him at night" kind of entity. It didn't matter what time of day it was or who you were. When my windows were open and shutting the first day, it was night, but the second time it happened, it was in the middle of the day. The first ever experience we had was pounding on the door at night. But later, when my alarm clock was going off, it was 9 AM on a Saturday. You know, the average time you set your alarm and then pack it into a box in the attic kind of time. If me and my friends were hanging out in the kitchen for a beer, the entity would show itself. Drawers containing silverware and knives would randomly start opening, and trash can top would start rocking at 2 PM in the afternoon. I'm not sure why the entity just went away, but it did. In some ways, I don't think the house was haunted at all. Sometimes I think we had strong enough negative energy to bring something in. We drank a lot, pills weren't hard to come by, and neither had any idea where to move forward in life. It was almost if your inner voice of hate manifested into a physical form. As we got healthy, got direction and moved forward, the entity slowly subsided. The cabin is still in my family. My mother-in-law refuses to let it go, and I went from being a 20-something-year-old brat to cleaning the gutters and scheduling specialist repairs for the old house. I love that cabin and where it put me. When my father-in-law passed away, I spent a few hours alone in that cabin hoping for a familiar knock, but I got nothing. When I go there now, there's no sense of doom, only warm welcoming, safety, and comfort. It was as if the entity wasn't trying to haunt us forever, only to be a spiritual nanny, so to speak. And when my wife and I matured, it parted ways. But my story isn't over yet. My mother-in-law has vowed to never let go of the cabin, and it's willed to my wife and her siblings. The ghost always messed with me more than my wife. I guess I had an open port that it could just slip into easier. But we both had experienced things. I've always been more attuned to the paranormal than her. My mother swears she's seen a ghost. You know, the physical embodiment of a person type. My mother's side has always been sensitive. It's not like we ever spoke about it much over the years, but stories did come up. Mostly good stories. I guess I come from a batch of sensitive folk. Don't get me started on the glass breaking. I haven't figured out that one. And I have a couple more unrelated cabin stories too. But maybe those will be for another day.
Like 6 more turns, bro, and we'll have both.
There's a valley in the northern part of Norway with some quite unexplainable sightings and encounters.
Computers
Some
and then
Norwegians might know the valley
nuclear
that I'm talking
submarines.
about, as some Finnish and Swedish hikers were taken by an avalanche in this area a few weeks ago, and it was all over the news. However, this valley is not only home to countless casualties by avalanches, but also, as I said, unexplainable sightings. Several people, including my uncle and aunt, have reported seeing strange and scary things while either being in the forest or the single dirt road that goes through the valley. Here are some true stories about people who've experienced the unexplainable. Number 1. The Hunter. There's a moose hunter living in the closest village to the valley, who's apparently experienced some quite chilling stuff. So chilling, in fact, that he has never told anyone about what he's seen. There are 2 encounters that stick out. As I said, this man is a moose hunter, which is a quite popular thing in Norway, with organized hunter teams and a yearly period between October and December when these hunters are allowed to hunt. Norway has one of the highest moose concentrations in the world, so it's not surprising how many hunt for them. However, what this hunter saw was probably not a moose. You see, around a decade ago, he was on post in one of the forests of the valley, waiting for moose. Then suddenly he saw something that scared him to death. He had his gun ready, but apparently it was so scary he didn't dare shoot it. As I said, he's never really told anyone what he's seen. The only thing he did was leave every single one of his belongings, like his provisions, gun, and backpack, and ran straight out of the valley to civilization. Scary, right? Or is it a lie? We don't know. But this next story will surely convince you it's not. The same hunter, for some reason, chose to camp in that valley sometime later. I don't know for sure what happened outside his tent while he was sleeping, because he never tells what he experienced, but something in that valley made him leave all his belongings again and run straight out the valley. However, this time he didn't dare go back for his tent, and someone else had to go fetch them for him. Clearly, something very chilling must have gone down in that valley for a seasoned hunter to never return. The next incident is the car that never gets closer. This has happened to several people, but I'm going to tell it from my aunt and uncle's point of view, as they have experienced it as well. So there's a dirt road going through the valley. My uncle and aunt drove their car on this road one night. Now, this valley is a pretty desolate place. By Norwegian standards, it's just 1 hour from the largest city in northern Norway, so they didn't expect to see any other drivers on that stretch, especially because the road was in bad condition. But as you probably would imagine by now, They saw the headlights of a car in the distance. My uncle and aunt didn't care much for it and continued driving, but making space for the other car, so when it gets close, it could drive past them. But the car didn't seem to get any closer. The headlights were still visible, and it wasn't driving away from them either. So my uncle and aunt started to wonder what it could be. They kept on driving for several minutes, thinking it was a car that had broken down, and the people needed help getting home. Or maybe it was the ghost car that other people had encountered on the road, known as the car that never gets any closer. And they never got any closer to the car. Now keep in mind they saw the headlights, not the rear lights. Eventually the lights disappear, and they never saw the car again. The third story is the ghost by the river. A friend of my aunt had experienced some pretty scary stuff, and seems to attract paranormal entities. One encounter was close to this valley. She was walking by a narrow road with her sister, approaching a small bridge. When she got close, she could feel a force pushing her, and when she stepped on the bridge, she got pushed hard and almost fell over into the river below. I don't remember the rest of the story, but I'm pretty sure she was quite frightened after the incident. Point being, this valley and surrounding area is likely very haunted, with things that would rather not be disturbed. For the longest time, woods have been growing behind my house. We live in a very rural part of the country, and I've always been what other kids describe as a fraidy cat. I never liked going into the woods, and I haven't done so in many years, due to something that scared the life out of me. When I was about 11 years old, I decided that because I was bored, I would go out and explore the woods. Now, in the past, as the property we lived on bordered the woods, I might go a few trees in and leave it at that, but never explored the depths, never ventured to see how deep it went. But today was different. Overcome with boredom and in the heat, I thought I might seek refuge in the cool atmosphere behind the house, in the trees. I got my dog and we started walking into the woods. My parents were at work, so it was just us two, and I was pretty sure that we'd be okay. Like I said, we're pretty rural, out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know how big these woods are, but I know that there's not an end to them for a while. We walk further and further in, until we find a small but quaint clearing.
Yeah, I
My
wiped
dog
what's
is
his nuts
making
off the
weird
face of the
sounds,
map.
sniffing, growling slightly
Nice.
off the ground, and I'm just
Yeah.
assuming he's found a small animal and is trying to get to it. I ignore him and look around the area, and that's when I notice something peculiar. Carved into a tree is a strange symbol. I look around. Some other trees nearby have similar symbols carved into them. The first thing I think, that's hard to do. I have no idea what the symbols mean. The first thing that came to mind was that they looked like car make logos, but still, I was quite young. I grab my dog, pull her lead, and start walking her further through the clearing, to the other side to see what was there. Just as we're approaching the end of the clearing, and going further into the woods, do I hear something behind me? We turn around, and there's nothing there. But as I'm looking backwards, facing the other way, does my dog go ballistic? She starts growling furiously, snarling as if there's something there, something invisible, and I can see fear in her eyes. She's pulling me on the lead, dashing to get home. She's pulling me so strongly and running so quickly that I let go of her lead, and she runs, terrified, all the way back. I look around me in fear, gasping for breath in these few moments, unsure of what to do. And then I hear something. It sounds like my name being whispered behind my back. Bradley. I sprint. I don't even look back, but I'm 100% sure that no one was there with me. Whatever the case, I made it home and didn't dare look out my window into the woods for a week. When I finally had enough courage to look, I saw nothing. I've never been back, not even to the border of those woods since. I'm too afraid of what I might see if I return. This was back in 2014, but I still remember it like it were yesterday. My grandparents had this cabin that was way up in the mountains.
I'm about to make a fucking armada, bro. Are you ready for this?
Lived up there
I'm ready.
I have been...
I had just
oh
finished
my god.
Second year of college, and my parents and I decided to visit since it had been a while. Now, this was the first time I had stayed there overnight, since we would usually stay at their regular house when we visited. I remember my uncle claimed he saw a ghost when he stayed up there, but I didn't think anything of it because he usually exaggerates and makes things up. I was the only one still awake at around 2 in the morning, and I heard what sounded like someone walking around outside. There was gravel all around the cabin, so you could hear footsteps. I initially thought it was an animal, but I decided to look out the window to be safe. I was afraid a person might be out there, because she did have some shady neighbors. I'm looking and saw no one despite hearing something out there. I turned the outside lights on to see better, and again, saw nothing. The footsteps sounded like they stopped right outside the front door. I looked through the peephole on the door and didn't see anything. There were no footprints around either, which was weird because it had rained earlier, and everything was very muddy around the cabin. If something had been waiting around the corner, they wouldn't have had to go through the mud before getting to the gravel. So that's why I figured there would be footprints. Now here's where it gets even creepier. I go into the kitchen to grab a drink, thinking that it must have been an animal, when I hear this deep voice. Now it was really low, and I couldn't understand what it was saying. It freaked me out, because I know my dad's voice isn't that low, and neither is my mum or grandma's. I call out, "What?" and the voice stopped. I peek into my grandma's room, because she sometimes listened to the radio at night, but it was off. The TV wasn't on either. I looked all over and find nothing. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. I still have no clue what I experienced, but I'm now starting to believe my uncle's ghost story. The footsteps creeped me out more than the voice, because it was very slow and sounded like someone was taking their time walking to the door. I also felt like I was being watched too. I didn't like staying there after that night. I sometimes wonder if the ghost of my great-grandfather who built the cabin still resides there. He had a deep voice from what I can remember. The whole experience was very odd, and it still gives me chills whenever I think about it. I've always been one to go out exploring abandoned buildings, or areas that are haunted. I've always been a skeptic, even though most of my friends have had what they believe to be a paranormal experience, simply because I've never experienced anything myself. So me and my friend Trevor were going out to whatever was apparently the most haunted road in Western New York. Although both of us have been to the road before, just not with each other. Trevor said he'd heard some crazy stuff on the road where he went, but I, on the other hand, had not. Trevor's had plenty of whack ghost happenings all through his life, and he believes there's a spirit.
Yeah, 5 turns and I
something
have
along those
nuclear
lines.
submarines, bro.
But let me tell you about this road. I don't know too much about it. This is just what my friends have told me and what I've read online.
Although, do
It's
I don't,
very old.
I wonder if I have to
and
have a special
long.
harbor.
No
No,
street lights,
we're
tons
good.
of trees following the road.
But it does
and some
require
creepy
uranium.
hidden paths in the woods. Apparently, people have seen a little girl, some horse-dog type thing, and an old man walking around with a lantern.
How do you get uranium?
There's also supposedly
You can
an
see it
old
around on your
church
map and you'll
somewhere
have
in
to
the woods
mine
that
it.
was burnt down. Anyway, we were driving up and down the road to make sure there were no serial killers or monsters. I was paranoid, okay? I might not be a big believer, but I get the creeps too. When this car all of a sudden drives by us. Thing is, just before we passed them, a black figure darts behind their car and just vanishes into the darkness. I couldn't believe my eyes. I hit the brakes as an immediate reaction, thinking I was about to hit a deer or something. But again, there was nothing to hit. It literally disappeared in front of us. Trevor saw it, I saw it, and the car next to us slammed on their brakes too and screamed, "What the hell was that?" So I'm sure as hell that they're assuming they saw something in their mirrors. I tried rationalizing, and we continued driving down the road and decided to park and turn off the car and lights. We were trying to get an EVP, so we needed silence, and didn't want to kill my car battery, so we brought our flashlights.
Fighting a holy
Nothing
war,
came
bro.
up. So we just started walking
Fighting a
down
holy
the
war?
road,
Kicking his ass.
listening
Yeah, I'm
and
kicking his
looking
ass.
around for any sign of paranormal
Get your
activity.
fucking religion out of
We
here,
get
you
to about
Hinduism
10
piece
feet
of
away
shit.
from my car when my freaking car doors just locked. Clear as day, you could hear it click. All 4 doors. Of course, Trevor heard it too, and we ran back to the car, and sure enough, every door was locked. I didn't touch my car keys. They were wrapped around my neck with a lanyard. Nothing was near my neck, and nothing bumped the buttons or anything. We both hopped in.
Montezuma
and skirted
denounced me again, little
off.
fucker.
Finally, as we get towards the middle of the road, we calm down and pull over again, just so that I didn't have a panic attack, because what? We're sitting there in my car. I'm looking down the road, and he's looking next to us, flashing his light, being all sketched out. I guess his flashlight kept flickering on and off, but that can easily be explained by old batteries. Probably. I kid you not. I
just
saw
need to
what
get this
looked like a
oil.
lantern. Maybe I was just being paranoid, but I saw something. Just as the light goes off into the woods, I turned to Trevor to see if he saw it too. And just before anything comes out of his mouth, we both hear what sounded like someone walking in the woods right next to us. I turned my car back on, and off we went, away from that damn road. Once I grow some more balls, we're bringing more people, and we're going back to Delaware Road. We might even go down the trails and look for the church, or what's left of it. This happened when I was around 8 years old. When I was young, I always wanted to do whatever my sister was doing. Therefore, when her friends at the time brought over her new Ouija board, of course I was playing it with them. I can remember this night so vividly. My sister, her friend, and I were in our family room sitting on the floor, while our mum sat at the kitchen table playing a game on the computer, but was still playing with us. A little backstory. My parents were both Christian, but didn't think a board game purchased from Toys R Us could be harmful. My mum and dad just had our house built a few years before, and we were the first to live here. However, there is nothing but woods in our backyard, which made it feel pretty creepy to play in front of a window that faced the woods. Anyhow, we played with this board for about an hour, asking it simple questions and getting simple responses. That is when my sister's friend asked if the spirit would give us a sign. The board said no. She then asked again if the spirit would give us a sign, and 10 seconds later, we all heard it. This evil growl came from thin air. It sounded like something was sitting in front of us. I still remember it to this day, because it was so loud and clear. It was not an animal sound, and most definitely didn't come from the woods. I remember that sinister feeling that immediately filled the air, and we all started freaking the hell out and running around the house. I begged my mum to call a priest, and I can remember the look on my mum's face like she knew it was real. I didn't want to scare us any further. She couldn't explain it. We were terrified. My sister and I shared a room, and we were all so scared to sleep at night that my dad would sleep on the floor so that we could rest. We weren't to leave each other alone. We even stayed in the bathroom while each other showered, because that experience haunted us. Now that I'm 23 years old and a psychology major, I have become somewhat skeptical towards paranormal activity. But when I think back to that piercing growl, I cannot find any other plausible explanation for what we heard. My mum passed about 5 years ago, and I wish I could ask her about it now, but I'm certain she would vouch for it. My sister and I also talk about it from time to time, but always get such an eerie feeling when explaining it. I'd like to know if anyone else has experienced anything similar. I have a cabin in the North Woods of Minnesota, located about 15 miles inland from Grand Marais, so basically Canada, and about as old of a forest that you can be in. I've been going to this cabin for 22 years. We built it from the ground up with our hands. The front half of our property is without a doubt my family's. However, we have a back lot that is about 10 acres. And
In 2 turns, I'll have a really awesome battleship.
I have not done a lot of exploring back there. We mostly use it to preserve the land and to pile trees that fall into the road. I decided to check it out with my wife and dog. I don't know if this next bit is relating to what happened, but it is the first time I have really explored our back lot, and really the only thing that stands out. We started on the road, right at the top of my driveway, and I get our bearing. We walk without incident for about 2 hours. Considering we were bushwalking with a machete, it was pretty grueling work, as anyone who has trailblazed can tell you. We stopped in an area that had what I like to call fairy mounds.
20 turns I win.
Fairies, but because it is a pile of dirt
Science
or rotted
victory?
plants
Yeah.
that have been completely covered in moss.
Sure.
And look,
8 turns I get robotics, 9 turns I get, or after 9 turns after that I get future tech, and that's it.
In the forest. After the 2
Hell
hours
yeah.
of walking, our dog yelps.
Damn,
and
bro, I won't even have time to build my army.
We figured she got into a beehive
We're just gonna win.
so we decided
I'm just gonna win.
Turn around. I did not see any bees,
Ugh.
but my wife did say she saw a
Alright, declare war as fast as we can.
As the day progressed, I kept hearing footsteps in our main lot, in the same set of trees on the southwest corner by our well. We have many animals including bears, lynx, wolves and deer, so I dismiss it as nothing, but the hair stands up on end, and I listen to my basic prey instincts and figure it's some sort of predator. Fast forward to that night. I still cannot shake that feeling of being watched by a predator. It's now pitch black out, and our dog keeps trying to go outside. But every time she does, she acts weird and doesn't leave the light circle cast by our floodlights. She keeps begging to be let out. I've seen this before, and it happened to my old dog, when a pack of wolves were on our land trying to lure the dog out to be ganged up. So I lock up the dog door and grab my gun. I cannot reiterate enough just how unsettled I feel. I've been on this land for almost 3 decades. I've slept under the stars, hunted in the trees, and hiked out with a flashlight for miles, because I know the paths so well. This night, however, the forest felt like a stranger. For the first time in my life, I did not feel welcome on my own land. It felt menacing. So I decide to go to bed and just sleep it off, as it's very late. My wife was watching a movie and had a soda after 5 p.m. So like any 30-year-old, she can't sleep yet. Incoming sleep paralysis. I'm laying in bed on my side, my arm under my ear, and I can feel my body start to get heavy. But I can hear my heartbeat in my arm like a drum beat. All of a sudden I realize I can't move at all, and my heart speeds up. I try to wiggle my fingers, and can only get them to wiggle very slightly. And I know for a fact at that moment I was in sleep paralysis. So I know what this comes with. Paralysis, intruders, waking dreams. Holy shit. I still think about it. I see my dog walk into my room. At least I think it's my dog. I can only see the shadow close to the ground, and I can't turn my head. So I tried to call her name. Coo. I can't make my mouth work. I tried to call her on my bed. Maybe the jostling will wake me up. So I lamely pat my bed with my limp hand. Also a no-go. My heart still beating in my head louder and louder, but it's comforting for some reason. I see my wife walk into the room. She sits on the bed, and I beg her to please wake me up. It comes out so soft I can barely hear myself. I ask for water, but she doesn't move. I try shouting to wake me up, but it comes out no louder than a murmur. As I look
He's
at her,
gonna
I
get a
realize
science
I did not
victory.
feel her actually sit on the bed. I look at her face and realize it's just a shadow. And why hasn't she moved since she got into the room? She is not my wife. Okay, that's weird. Never heard of an intruder being a person.
Bro, I have no idea where
So I
uranium
look
is, though.
away, my eyes glancing around the room.
You don't have any.
I'm frantically wiggling my toes and fingers, trying
Ugh,
anything
that might be a
to get
problem.
my goddamn body to do just one thing I tell it to do. Nothing. My heart sounds like one solid beat now. I look up.
I don't have any near
and see
me
her.
either.
In the middle of
Oh,
the
I
room,
do.
there is an
I have one
absolute
uranium.
black circle. A spot in the room devoid of anything. I feel like I'm being pulled into the spot as it keeps getting bigger and bigger. Then all at once, with my heart thundering in my ears, it's over. I regain control of my body. I look around disoriented, and I look down. No dog. I walk out to the living area, and my wife is there. I ask her if the dog came into the room, and she says no. Apparently I was in bed for an hour. I check the clock and it's 3:07. My dog is sleeping on the couch. The feeling is gone. I talk to my wife about it, and she thinks it was just a nightmare created by me freaking myself out. I tell her I think we ran into a wood spirit of some kind, or just a really freaky demon. I still don't know. I've had unexplained things happen to me before, but this one felt so close. I have no description other than that. I live in Hobart, Tasmania, which is a city surrounded by forest, which Australians call the bush. It doesn't take long if you walk in any direction to find yourself in the bush. One
There
afternoon
is still
in
an end game. Like
1987,
once you get a
I
science
decided to
victory,
go
I left
for a
more
walk on a
victory
nearby
options.
reserve, known
So
as
it'll come
Knock
like we
Lofty,
can.
which
In total,
comprises
there
of a
can be
series
1,
of
2,
hills
3, 4
behind
points.
North Hobart. As I
Oh yeah.
walked along, I looked
Yeah.
up
So,
and saw a man standing right
do
in the
my does
middle
my
of the walking
bomber
track.
have to be attached
He
to
had long
somebody, or
hair and a
what's the deal
beard
with this?
and seemed a bit grubby. I could tell that there was something weird about him
Your
from the
bombers can
fact
only
that
be
he
inside
stood
of
in
your
the middle of the
airports,
track
or you can
and waited
put them in
as I
your
walked
boats
towards
and
him.
move them, or you can
He started staring
send an
straight into my
engineer
eyes,
ahead,
otherwise
and they
doing
can
nothing.
build little camps that you
His
can
presence
move your
worried
airplanes
me,
into.
so as I passed, I
A
looked
what?
away from him, because he had not taken his
They
eyes
have
off
to
me,
have landing
and I
strips,
was
but they
very
have like
scared.
110
There
tile
being
range or
no
something
one
like
else on the
that.
track that day that I'd seen as I had walked by.
I know Spud
And,
Wrench.
foolishly, I'd not left a note at home for my friends stating that I was out in the bush. So, if this guy had been a killer or something,
Also,
he would
you
have
can
had no
keep getting
problems
more
getting away with
points,
it
like overall
and making me
points. Once you
disappear
get
without
future
a
tech, you can
trace.
keep researching
As I
future tech,
passed right
and
by
also
him,
you can
I felt a
win-win.
palpable
If you do the
madness
space
growing
project
in
and
him,
send it up,
and
I
I
think like
kept my
3
head
satellites,
down,
you
worrying
win-win.
that he was now following
Right.
me.
Like it'll like.
Then I
it'll
waited
end
until
the
I was
game.
sure he was a fair way behind me, before turning back and see if he was indeed following me. Instead, what I saw amazed me so much I stopped dead in my tracks and watched him for a little while. He smiled straight at me, and I think I must have unknowingly grinned a little back at him in amazement. What he was now doing was still standing in the exact same place where I just walked past him, except he was now beaming with an insanely proud smile and staring into my eyes with wild exhilaration at what he'd somehow managed to do, because all over his outstretched arms, shoulders, and head were hopping dozens and dozens of tiny and wild native birds, seemingly attracted to this person, as though by some weird magnetic force, something that I cannot explain to this day, and which I have only seen as something fitting into the realms of the paranormal for its inexplicably strange nature. I could not believe what I was seeing, and afterwards what I had seen, but I also did not feel safe to approach him, so I turned around and went home, impressed by what I'd witnessed and very excited about sharing this story with friends. Unfortunately, the first person to get home completely refused to believe my story, so I gave up bothering trying to tell anyone else about it that day. However, 10 years later or so I mentioned it to him, and he exclaimed, "Oh yeah, I know some other people who saw him, and they say it happened to them as well," which really vindicated me. I don't know whether or not it was actually my story that I told him years ago that he recalled, as he smoked a lot of the green, but I felt good to know that I'd finally managed to at least get one friend to believe the strange Birdman of Knocklofty Terrace. I haven't been up there for years, and sometimes wonder if he still hangs around up there, waiting to freak out unsuspecting passers-by, or if he just manifests out of the ether as some type of master magician to call his bird friends. But one thing I am certain of is that on that day there really was nothing you could call normal about the encounter at all. I've had a few personal paranormal experiences in my life, but this one stands out in my mind. To preface, I am a 22-year-old male, currently in my last semester of college. This story takes place during my freshman year at the same college. I go to a small university in Connecticut. It is located pretty much right at the base of a popular state park with a large mountain. If you're familiar with Connecticut,
Alright, bro.
I'm sure you
I need
can
to go to
guess which
bed.
university I'm talking about.
Ah, we're about to
There
fucking
is a
people
lot
up.
of Native American folklore associated with the mountain,
Okay.
as Native American tribes used to live up in the surrounding area, and some weird stuff has definitely happened there. A kid even
Like you've
fell
already
to
exited
death
the game
while
out?
hiking not too long ago.
No.
But I highly doubt that was due to anything
Just like we do
paranormal.
this turn. And then
Behind my freshman dorm building There was a steep
Alright,
hill
let's do
that
this
led into the
turn,
woods.
bro. I'm so
This
close to
was where
science victory. We
everyone in
literally
our
only have
building
like
would go to
10
slow.
turns.
Halfway up the hill,
Yeah,
It's
but in
over.
there
this
was
game
a
mode,
little
there's more than
cleared
one
out space
victory,
with
so
a
it's not
concrete
just
wall
whoever
that
gets
you
the
could
first
sit on.
victory.
And then a
In the
much
last one
larger
we played,
area at the top of
it
the
was only
hill
science and
with
culture, so
trails
whoever got
and a
it
big
first won.
concrete wall.
But this
Oh.
one,
It was a nightly occasion for
in
me
this
and
one,
my roommates
like you may get
to
the
head up to
science
those
victory, but
woods
that's
and
only one
smoke a little
victory out of
debris.
1, 2, 3
Usually,
victories,
there would
and
be
then there's
other people
also the
smoking too,
tiebreaker, which
so
is
we were
your
completely
overall
fine
points,
with
which is
going
like your
there at any
tourism.
time.
I have
One
80
night,
tourism right
my
now.
roommate and I headed to the hill just
So
like
like
we
we'll
did
get one
every
victory.
night. Our other roommate stayed behind
Oh, we'll get
because he
two,
had to
because
study
you are
little
ahead in
homework or
culture as
something.
well.
I don't fully remember.
Yeah.
We climbed the hill and moved to the
Yes.
smaller clearing
So if we get the
halfway up
science victory and the
rather
culture
than the larger
victory,
area.
we'll fucking be good
There
to
was
go.
no one else up there, and it was a little
Or
later
if we
than
wipe
normally
everybody
went
out
up,
before 500
as it was
turns and
right
there's no one
around
left.
midnight.
I was really hoping to
But
just
like I
wipe
said, we
everybody
felt
out
safe
with
enough
my
to
Like-
go up there
Armada. I'm just gonna make a bunch of fighters.
We smoked a few bowls
Bombers are
and
dumb.
then
just hung out for a while.
I'll trade you,
Keep
once
in
I get
mind,
this
both of us
uranium
smoked pretty
mined,
regularly,
I'll trade
so
you
2
uranium so you
bowls
can
wasn't
make some,
doing much for us.
Subs.
And I'm definitely not the
I got
type
regular
of
aircraft
submarines,
carriers.
but
stoned,
make aircraft
so
carriers
our
so you can carry your
sobriety,
airplanes
or lack
across the
thereof,
oceans.
was not an excuse for
And
Wait a
then you
minute.
can bomb people from your boats.
It was pretty windy that night,
oh.
so all of
So
the
wait,
trees
even
around
with
us
fighters,
were
I can't go
loudly
across the
swaying.
ocean.
Out of
Correct.
nowhere,
Well, unless they're
the
within
wind
the range.
completely stopped.
Unless
and the
they're within the
trees
range
fell
of your
still.
like flight.
Then
like,
the leaves on the
tiles
trees
or whatever.
that we were standing
Oh
by
my god, that's gross.
very slowly and eerily fell
I
to the
know
ground,
planes take,
all at the
planning.
same level and speed.
but they're super
looked at
strong.
each other
They're the strongest
and
like
kind of nervously
siege
laughed.
stuffs. Plus, you can make them
Suddenly,
have
we were both
nukes. You can arm them
filled
with
this
nukes, and then
massive
like
sense
you
of
have like
impending
your
doom.
advanced laser
Like
jets
something was
that have
telling us
like
to leave the woods
150
immediately.
range. So like
I know
pretty
this
much
because my
everything you're
roommate told
fully
me he
zoomed out
felt
map
the
speed.
same way after the fact.
And then you just
We grabbed our
Can
weapons
Can I exit
and
out?
full-fledged
Yeah.
sprinted out of the
Sweet.
woods and down the steep hill. As I was running down the hill, I fell backwards really hard and messed up my elbow. To be honest, it almost felt like I was yanked back by something. But there's a definite possibility that I just slipped on the dirt, because we were flying
although
down
you
this
getting a
essentially
science
vertical
victory will
hill.
be solid.
I picked myself up, and we ran
Especially
into our
considering
dorm
that
building, slamming
there's
the door
a
behind
deity
us.
entity on
After
this
that,
map.
my roommate
Right.
refused to
Although
go into the woods to
he's at
smoke for the rest of the year.
893, so maybe we want to
There were a
wipe him
few
out
times
next.
where I
Like,
went back
just
up the
fucking
hill
go to war
and
with
into
him.
those woods by myself
Or we can
to
wipe
smoke,
out Gandhi to take out
as I
that
didn't
team.
feel like walking across campus to go to another spot.
Either way,
For the
my
most
units
part,
are
I was
ready.
fine.
I'm
I
recovered
didn't
from going to
experience
war.
anything, but there were a few.
I just need to mine that uranium so that we can make aircraft. I don't have any aircrafts though. I have a couple boats, and I have the fucking troops. I need to make a medic and an observation balloon.
Alright, bro, I'm going to bed. I will
Alrighty,
see
good
you
night, you
later.
too.
Yeah. Good night. Drive safe tomorrow.
Thanks, will do.
Alright, team. I'm going to send you over to the little bro. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your night, and thanks for watching. Bye.